Hey everybody, this is Joshua Kress again. Richard, can you confirm that you are on the line and able to speak?
Yes, I'm here, Josh, but I could barely hear you. I heard Kapua really loud when she was talking.
Okay, my apologies. Richard, go ahead and hopefully you all can hear me. Richard, it's 10:06, so I believe we have a quorum. If you want to go ahead and get started, or if we want to confirm with staff that we have a quorum, and then you can go ahead and get started.
Okay, so do we have a quorum? I couldn't hear you. Hi.
Yes, we do have a quorum.
Okay, I'll get started here. Okay. The meeting is called to order at 10:01. Welcome board members and audience at home attending via the Zoom to the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board meeting. Meetings of the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board are open to the public and comply with the Bagley Open Meeting Act. This act allows for public comment on all agenda items. Audience members may address the board following each agenda item. All speakers from the audience are limited to 3 minutes. Are there any members of the audience that require accommodations to participate in this meeting? Please use the raise hand feature on the Zoom application or send a message to Industrial Hemp if you need accommodations to participate in this meeting. We will begin by conducting roll call for board members. When called upon, please provide a brief introduction for the audience participating on this webinar. Van Butsik. Are you here, Van?
Hi, Richard. Don't see Van logged in.
Okay, I could barely hear you now, Kapua. I heard you really good before.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, but very soft. And my volume's turned up all the way. Well, we'll continue here. Lisa Herbert.
Good morning, Lisa Herbert, Sutter County Agricultural Commissioner.
Thank you, Lisa. Jack Norton.
I'm here, Jack Norton, hemp farmer, Alameda County.
Thank you. Rob Priscilla.
I'm here, Rob Porcella with Pacific Hemp Consulting. I'm a hemp farmer at a nursery and also a finished products manufacturer in Fresno County.
Thank you, Rob. Vanessa Ramirez. David Robinson.
Hello, can you hear me? I was muted, so I couldn't talk. This is Vanessa Ramirez. I'm a hemp farmer in Ventura County.
Thank you, Vanessa. Dave Robinson. Okay, Richard Soria, retired horticulture instructor and current pest control advisor. Lucas Wilson.
Dave Robinson, I'm here. I had to wait for the host to unmute me.
Oh, good morning.
This is Luke Wilson. Luke Wilson. I'm farming in Butte, Sutter County.
That was Lucas. Lucas Wilson. Okay, our new member, Kevin Johnson.
Kevin Johnson, I'm here, Humboldt County grower, farmer, and new member.
Good, welcome aboard, Kevin.
Thank you.
Each board member should receive an email with all the handouts for today's meetings. Copies of the agenda and all handouts are available at the iHab website. All handouts will be brought up via the webinar as they are discussed. The topics of discussion for this meeting are new member orientation, review and approve the amendments to the methodology and procedures to amend the list of approved cultivars and the list of approved cultivars. Program activities, task force updates, election of board officers. Are there any requests for corrections or changes to the agenda order?
No, but Richard, there is Dr. Emma Aronson is in the chat. She says she's a new member of the board and would like to introduce herself.
Oh, okay.
Hi, I was unable to unmute myself before. I'm Dr. Emma Aronson. I'm an associate professor at the University of California, Riverside, working on environmental microbiology with a focus on soil microorganisms. And I'm very pleased to be joining the board today. Thank you for bringing me on.
Thank you, Doctor. Okay, I didn't hear any requests or corrections for changes. We'll continue. As a reminder, the program asks that all board members check the current board member list posted on the CDFA Industrial Hemp webpage for any needed corrections. During the board meeting, all board members will not be muted by the program to allow for full participation. To minimize background noise, please make sure to personally mute yourself during the meeting when you are not talking. There are no breaks scheduled on the agenda, but we will take a break approximately every hour as needed or requested. A quick note on public comments. We will have the opportunity for public comments throughout the meeting, as well as opportunity for general comments at the end. For comments during an agenda item or pending board motion, please keep comments pertinent to the item or motion. At the end of the meeting, we will have opportunity for additional comments, both related to the meeting and for items not on the agenda. We request all individuals who would like to comment on an agenda item to use the raised hand feature in Zoom. We also request for each speaker to state their name and an affiliation before commenting. Due to the large number of attendees, we will be limiting all commentators to a maximum of 3 minutes per agenda item, unless there are follow-up questions from the board. We will be timing all commentators and will try to provide warning prior to the time limit ending. Thank you for your consideration as we try to provide everyone with an opportunity to comment during the proceedings. If you have questions for CDFA regarding industrial hemp and the industrial hemp program, please direct your questions to the CDFA staff. You may contact them by emailing or calling 916-654-0435. Okay, we're at the new member orientation, and we'll let you take over, Josh.
Thank you, Richard. Hopefully you all can hear me okay. Richard, before we get started, we do have a couple of other members who have been selected but have not yet completed the full process, and I'll be discussing some of the limitations on that in just a minute. But if Will Clyden, did you want to introduce yourself very quickly before we get started while we're still on that agenda item? And Justin Eve as well. If you want to raise your hand, staff will unmute you.
Will Clyden here. Pleasure to be here. I'm CEO of Ojai Energetics in Ventura County and product manufacturer.
Welcome aboard, Will.
Thank you, Will.
Thank you.
Justin, I believe you're unmuted.
Hi, my name is Justin Eve. I'm working with the Hemp Farmers Guild. I am an organic farmer from Sutter County. We do nursery and some seed breeding, but I am here representing the Hemp Farmers Guild, which is agriculture trade association specifically to support hemp farmers in the state. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the appointment.
Welcome aboard, Justin.
Great, thank you both. Yep, thank you both. And everyone, can you hear me okay? Just to confirm, I can switch audio sources if needed.
Good.
I can. Yeah,
We can
okay,
hear you clearly,
perfect.
Josh.
All right, sounds good. So for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Joshua Kress. I'm the branch chief for pest exclusion within CDFA's Plant Health and Pest Prevention Services Division. One of the programs that I oversee that's within my branch is the Industrial Hemp Program. And so I'm going to be providing a few slides here on information for new members, kind of going back and discussing some of the requirements and the overarching laws that pertain to the board itself, just to make sure that new members and old members and the public have some background information on the program. So we've got a few items on here, as you can see here. I'm going to go ahead and go through everything if that's okay, and I can take questions at the end and we can go back and discuss anything in more detail as needed.
Okay,
But if we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Oh yeah, sure, Jack.
Just to interrupt for a second, could I confirm we have three new members here today? They are Dr. Emma Aronson, Will Clyden, and Justin. I missed Justin's last name.
Yeah, Justin Eve, and then we also have Kevin Johnson, is also a new member and is eligible to vote, and I'll be discussing that in just a minute.
Okay, great, thank you. And
Yep.
Kevin Johnson.
Yep. Yes. Thank you, Jack, for the clarification.
Thank you.
Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So first, we're going to talk about some of kind of the background and the overarching laws and the requirements for new members as they join the board. So, and we've discussed, many of you may be familiar, but all the laws pertaining to industrial hemp are in the California Food and Agricultural Code, Division 24. And so within Division 24, the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board is established in Section 81001. And so I'm going to go ahead and go quickly through this section. I've got the full section of Section 81001 here, just so that way everyone is aware of all of these requirements. But I'm going to kind of go pretty quickly, and then if there's any questions, we can come back and discuss things in more detail. So at the start, you see here, Section 81001 establishes the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board within CDFA and outlines the board membership. If we can go to the next slide. This next provision that you see here, and again, I'm not going to read through these in detail for the most part. This provision, subsection B here, is a provision that requires board members to file a Form 700, and I will be talking in just a moment about what the Form 700 is and what the requirements are there, but that's what this provision is indicating. As you can see here in subsection C, the term of office for a board member is 3 years. If a vacancy exists or comes up, then the secretary would appoint a new member for the duration of that term, then we would need to seek reappointment or new members every 3 years. Board members do not receive a salary, but may be reimbursed for travel costs. Obviously, we're not doing much of that right now, holding all our meetings on Zoom. But if we do return to in-person meetings at some point, the travel costs to those meetings are reimbursable. Next slide. And then here we get to the actual responsibilities for the board that are established in the law. So first off, the board shall advise the secretary and make recommendations on all matters pertaining to Division 24, including but not limited to the industrial hemp law and regulations, enforcement, annual budgets, and the setting of an appropriate assessment rate necessary for administration of these laws. The board shall annually elect a chair from its membership and other officers as necessary. We will be discussing that later in this agenda. And then the board shall meet at the call of its chair or the call of the secretary or at the request of any 4 members of the board. The board shall meet at least once a year to review budget proposals and fiscal matters. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. So just some kind of procedural things now and basic requirements. Board members are appointed by the Secretary of Food and Agriculture. So as was mentioned, 4 additional board members have been selected by the Secretary for appointment. Each board member must complete an oath of office, which is either notarized or witnessed by a department official. In the past, for some of these boards, that witnessing by a department official, we would conduct that at an in-person meeting and have it as part of the agenda. But since we have transitioned over to fully holding meetings electronically, All boards that I'm aware of at CDFA are requiring notarization, and so that will be a requirement for this board moving forward, is that the oath of office must be notarized. The oath of office is filed with the Secretary of State, and then the board membership is provided also filed with the Secretary of State and is posted online as it's updated. Board members are also required to file a statement of economic interest, or Form 700. That Form 700 is filed within 30 days of assuming office, within 30 days of leaving office, and annually by April 1st. So, excuse me, depending on timing, a board member may need to file multiple times during a given year to meet all of those requirements. Kapua Kalamoku is the filing officer for the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board, and board members should please feel free to reach out to Kapua if you need assistance in that process. It's not listed on here, but the Form 700 is now filed completely online via the Fair Political Practices Commission. CDFA does have information on the Form 700 on our website, and there's a link in the presentation, which again, this presentation either is or will be posted online for everyone and has been provided to board members. So CDFA has information on required filers and CDFA's provision or CDFA's specific requirements on the Form 700. And then overall, the enforcement of this requirement actually falls under the Fair Political Practices Commission. And so we also have a link to more information from the FPPC, and they're the ones that actually take any necessary actions for noncompliance with this statement of economic interest requirement. So again, board members cannot participate in board meetings until these are completed. Normally this is not an issue for timing, but because we had two board meetings in fairly rapid succession with appointments in the middle, sometimes it takes a little while to get all that paperwork done. So I appreciate board members and our new members for your timeliness in trying to accomplish these requirements. And thank you to Kevin Johnson for being able to get that done. So for any board members that have not completed those requirements, you are not yet eligible to participate in the board as a board member. We anticipate and look forward and appreciate your willingness to serve. However, at this time, we will have to consider you to still be a public member for the purposes of this meeting until those forms are completed. Next slide. So there's a few other requirements that apply to every single board member. So right here, we've got just a government code section for your reference, just to note very quickly that anyone who serves on a board for CDFA is under the government code is considered an administrative volunteer. And so as a volunteer, there are certain other policies and regulations that you are also required to comply with in addition to the ones that I've already mentioned. So next slide. Here's a couple of them. So these are probably the main ones, and I don't know that there are any other training courses that are required, but just to make sure that you're aware that the policies do apply. But as far as required trainings for board members are also required to complete the ethics orientation for state officials. That must be completed within 30 days of appointment, and then every 2 years. That training is administered by the California Department of Justice. And again, much like the Form 700, the oversight and enforcement of that provision is done by the Fair Political Practices Committee. And then board members are also required to take the sexual harassment prevention training course. That must be completed within 6 months of appointment, and then every 2 years thereafter. We do have a course that's administered by CDFA. However, CDFA does accept course certification from other entities that are listed there. So again, board members, if you have taken training courses that you think would apply, please feel free to reach out to Kapua and work with her on meeting that requirement. Next slide. And then we've got a very quick overview here of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act is part of the government code. The goal of the act is to ensure that the public has a seat at the table. It covers advisory bodies with 3 or more members, and the intent is to not have secret or hidden meetings by these groups. Go ahead and go next slide. So very quickly, what is a meeting? A meeting occurs when a quorum of that body convenes, either serially or all together in one place, to address issues that are within the body's jurisdiction. So again, I've already reviewed the board membership, with the board having 13 members. So when 7 members of the board meet, at least 7 members of the board meet, that would be a meeting when they're meeting to address issues that pertain to the board. And as I discussed earlier, the board's responsibilities are outlined in the Food and Ag Code. So when that happens, the meeting must be announced and open to the public. The Bagley-Keene Act expressly prohibits the use of direct communication, intermediaries, or technological devices employed by members to develop a collective concurrence on an action by members outside of a public meeting. So there's, I think, a little bit more information on this on the next slide. So violations, excuse me. So violations of Bagley-Keene can occur when members have a separate pre-meeting to discuss any, and again, these are examples, these are certainly not comprehensive, but one example would be if members had a separate pre-meeting to discuss an issue that they may take action on, planning on taking action on during a meeting. If they had a pre-meeting to discuss that outside of a regular meeting, that would be a violation. A violation of Bagley-Keene can also occur when a chain of communications involves contact from, say, and here they give an example, member A contacts member B, who then contacts member C about the same issue. That would be a serial meeting and would be a violation of Bagley-Keene. And then a serial meeting can also occur when member A communicates with member B and then communicates the same message to member C. And again, the intent is that these deliberations and communications should be held during a public meeting so that way the public can be present. Next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about motions and subcommittees. So in order to create a motion or vote on any item, a quorum is needed. So again, a quorum for the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board, half plus 1, or half rounded up. So in this case, 7 members of the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board is a quorum. An item must be on the agenda for a motion to be made, and that item must be clear enough for the public to understand what the issue is that's being discussed. The motion must be put forth by a member and seconded by another, signaling at least 2 people are interested in the action. When that occurs, the chairperson will request discussion and public comment. Then the chair will call for a vote and then state the result of that vote. Notice Robert's Rules of Order is mentioned here. While we do not and are not required to specifically comply with Robert's Rules of Order, we do use that as our overarching guideline for all of our boards, and that the intent is to use that as kind of a baseline for holding meetings. Next slide. So when the board makes a motion, for the purposes of this board, any motions are recommendations to the Secretary of Food and Agriculture. The Secretary receives motions as made by the board for consideration. The IHAB does not act independently and cannot write letters as an independent body or make decisions outside of these recommendations. However, individual board members can make statements on their own. So at a recent meeting, the board did write a letter, but the board wrote a letter to the Secretary. So again, that's a recommendation to the Secretary and is fully within the board's jurisdiction. If an item is not on the agenda, the board can ask for it to be placed on the next agenda as an action item. But again, in order for the board to make a motion, it needs to be pertaining to an item listed on the agenda, and any motions made by the board are recommendations to the Secretary. Next slide. The board can ask CDFA to take action on the items pertaining to the board during the meeting. The board can also request to have guest speakers or subject matter experts at meetings to provide more information on a specific item or topic. However, the item or topic must be on the agenda. The board cannot utilize the presence of someone in the audience to bring up an item not on the agenda for board business, but they can ask the audience member if they would be able to speak on the issue at a future meeting once that item can actually be placed on an agenda and noticed properly. Public members are allowed to speak on items that pertain to the board agenda. Items not on the agenda can be suggested by the public, but the board cannot take action on those. Next slide. So just some quick notes on committees and task forces. They're certainly an important and efficient way to explore specific topics related to the board or trying to get some more details. This board has used them fairly extensively since the very beginning. A committee will typically have at least 1 board member present, and a committee, a group of at least 3, is subject to the requirements of Bagley-Keene. So voting does not occur during committee meetings, and outside parties may attend to provide detail and expertise. Committee meetings have to have an agenda, there has to be minutes taken, And then from those meetings, the committee would provide updates and recommendations to the board on issues of concern. Additionally, and again, this is the method that we normally have used for this board, is that up to 2 members can further investigate an issue in preparation for a future board meeting. We have 2 such presentations on the board agenda today. Those members may speak with subject matter experts as long as those subject matter experts are not other board members. They must report their activities, findings, and possible recommendations to the full board on the issue of concern at a full board meeting. So again, we've got 2 such items on the agenda today. Next slide. And then I've just had a couple of slides, just very basic general information on the program itself. So the laws and regulations for the industrial hemp program. The program is established in California law, as I said, in California Food and Agricultural Code Division 24. The program is administered statewide by the California Department of Food and Agriculture, or CDFA, with local administration by the county agricultural commissioners. CDFA has established regulations to specify, clarify, and ensure consistent administration of this law. All of the regulations pertaining to this program are in California Code of Regulations, Title 3, Division 4, Chapter 8, Industrial Hemp Cultivation. Next slide. So again, high level, Division 24 of the Food and Agricultural Code includes establishment of the Industrial Hemp Advisory Board, requirement that any person that cultivates industrial hemp registers with the County Agricultural Commissioner prior to planting. There are requirements for planting, including the use of approved cultivars, THC concentration testing, and destruction of non-compliant crops. There's also requirements that CDFA submits a state plan to USDA for approval in accordance with federal law and corresponding federal regulations. And then in addition to these provisions, cultivation of industrial hemp is generally subject to the same laws and regulations as the other agricultural commodities. So some of those would include plant pest quarantines, the need for a license to sell nursery stock or seed, organic certification, and then the requirements for licensing to handle, manufacture, or process farm products. So again, those are standard requirements that apply to all agricultural crops, whereas Division 24 only applies to industrial hemp. Next slide. And then we do get a lot of questions on funding, so I did include the provision here related to funding for the industrial hemp program. So that's Food and Agricultural Code Section 81005, where the department shall establish a registration and renewal fee to be paid by growers of industrial hemp, but not to establish agricultural research institutions to cover the actual cost of implementing, administering, and enforcing the provisions of this division. The fees are collected by the County Agricultural Commissioner. CDFA reimburses the commissioner for the costs related to the registration itself. And then the County Board of Supervisors may also establish a reasonable fee to cover the actual costs of the commissioners other than those that are outlined in Subdivision B. Next slide. And then we've got a slide here on resources, just additional resources for people. So there's the Industrial Hemp Program webpage, County Agricultural Commissioner information, where there's a map with links to each of the County Agricultural Commissioner's offices, and then the program contact information with our email and phone number. And that's it. So are there if there's any questions or comments from the board, I can go ahead and take those.
Hey, Josh, it's Rob Porchella. I have a question. On the Form 700 and all the stuff that the new members have to fill out, I know it's pretty extensive, and I realize they've had limited time to do this, but for purposes of anything that may be voted on today, have they all completed everything, or do we have any new members who are not going to be considered voting members on this today? So I guess my question would be, how many actual voting members do we have on the call today?
Yeah, and so staff, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Kevin Johnson has completed all the necessary paperwork and is eligible and participating as a voting member today. I believe that the other 3 members who have been selected have not yet completed those, and so are not yet eligible to participate fully in the board. Again, staff, please correct me if I'm wrong, but based off of those counts, that would leave us with 8 present members who are eligible to vote in today's meeting.
And we can confirm that is correct, Josh.
All right, great. Thank you, Locke.
Okay, do we have any public comments then on this agenda item? Okay, I don't hear any. Moving on, review and
Yes,
approval
and
of.
Richard,
Go ahead.
oh, and Richard, I was just going to let you know, I was going to confirm with you that we don't have any hand raises or any comments in the chat box.
Okay, thank you, Kapua. Okay, moving on, review and approval of amendments to the methodology and procedure to amend the list of approved cultivars.
Richard?
Yes.
Before we move to the next item, I'd just like to say welcome to the new members and excited to have more participation from folks involved in the hemp industry in California.
Yeah, I'd like to say welcome aboard too. Thank you. Okay,
Hey,
let's.
Richard, it looks like
Hey,
Kevin John.
And Kevin,
Yes, I just wanted to say a couple words, a little bit about myself. I'm a third-year organic certified hemp farmer from Humboldt. I also own and operate one of the oldest brick and mortar hemp retail stores in the U.S., which I have done for over 30 years. And I look forward to working with the board, CDFA, and the community members of hemp farmers in California.
Fantastic. Welcome, Kevin.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Yeah, welcome.
All right, and
And
staff
Vanessa
Vanessa
has
is
been
asking
unmuted.
to be unmuted.
So I have a,
Thank you.
first of all, this is Vanessa Ramirez, and welcome to the new members. Welcome aboard. And I would like to have a little more information about the new members. Where can we get that, or is that something that you will be sending us? Just since we are not able to meet in person, it will be too great to at least know who they are, and just like Justin right now presented himself, just a little bit about them and their expertise.
That's a great idea, Vanessa.
Yeah, so this is Josh. So, I mean, if the other new members would like to speak up and provide a quick introduction right now, that'd be fine. We will be updating board member lists and certainly we'll be including them in future meetings, and there will be additional opportunities moving forward. But I think that'd be fine if any of the other selected members would like to do a quick introduction right now. And if you're unable to mute, go ahead and raise your hand and staff will work on that.
Hi, I think I got unmuted. Yeah, you can hear me. I apologize, I couldn't hear. I was having trouble connecting for a moment. I was asked to unmute though. What was I responding to? I apologize.
Well, you already gave a brief introduction to yourself earlier, Emma, but if you could maybe recap that and maybe talk about how you interface with hemp currently, that would be
absolutely. I'd be very happy to. Thank you. I'm sorry, I was having some trouble connecting for a moment. Yes, so I am an associate professor of environmental microbiology at the University of California, Riverside. And I have been working in the last couple of years to understand the microorganisms that are associated with hemp in the soil and hemp roots. Essentially, there's been a lot of informal research done over the years on hemp and other forms of cannabis and their associations with microorganisms like mycorrhizae and soil bacteria. And so I'm working to understand those in a much more deep level. I'm also a member of the USDA multi-state industrial hemp research project, where on a broader scale, we're trying to figure out the best approaches for pest management and other disease management for hemp. And so that plays a role in my research as well. And I'm in the Department of Plant Pathology and Microbiology at University of California, Riverside, where we have a lot of plant pathologists who I consult with in relation to hemp pathology as well. So that's kind of my context. And I'm just very excited to be working on this board and bringing a Southern California perspective. I've been in contact with a lot of hemp farmers in Southern California, and it seems like a lot of the issues that they deal with, high temperatures and water management, while they're similar to some Northern California and Central California issues, they might have a slightly different perspective. And so that's something I'm hoping to bring to this group.
Thank you. That's fascinating.
Thank you,
I'd
Doctor.
love to learn more about those projects you're working on. They sound very interesting.
Okay, Justin or Will, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Will Clyden, honored to be here. Founded Ojai Energetics back in 2014. We focus on, we're an intellectual property company up at the parent, and then have different divisions from consumer tech to life science to industrial applications into energy storage. And helped initiate SB 1409 to be able to grow hemp for flower in California back then, and make consumer products with different technologies for rapid onset, background in regenerative agriculture, and excited to be here.
Welcome aboard, Will. Glad to have you. Justin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Justin Eve. I'm representing the Hemp Farmers Guild, which is an agriculture trade association specifically to support hemp farmers in the state. I have a background and run my own company. The company's name is 7 Generations Producers, but we're a USDA certified organic farming operation. We also hold the nursery permit and cultivation and breeding permits for hemp. I have a plant sciences and soil chemistry background, started in agriculture over 10 years ago, working in the Central Valley for hybridizing species, technology called molecular breeding, where we're working on carbon credits and sequestration around dairy farming. And through that work, we got into green technologies that really focus on sustainable farming. We consider ourselves in the permaculture industry, installing and developing permanent agriculture systems that work symbiotically to reduce the need for fertigation and pesticide usage, along with the reduction of water usage. We've worked with a company with soil chemistry out of New Mexico. They have a partnership with the national laboratories there, Los Alamos and Sandia. So we do subatomic soil chemistry research and have been discovering the molecular aspects of soil and how it works at a deep level. And from there, we're big believers in hemp as a crop, and we look forward to working through that and seeing this thing grow. We're mainly focused right now on industrial applications for seed and fiber around wood replacement products and plastic. And we're also been working with essential oil manufacturers to create terpene-rich varieties and produce terpenes with organic standards into the marketplace. I appreciate you having me, and I look forward to meeting all of you and learning about how we can collaborate to push this industry forward, as I do believe California's agriculture will put about 10% into cannabis and hemp production over the next 10 years. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Justin, and welcome aboard. Okay, should we move on then, Josh, to the next item? Or do we have any public comments on this item?
Yep.
No
I don't
public.
think we see anything. I think you're. Yeah.
Go ahead,
Go ahead.
Kapua.
Hello, everyone. This is Lafayette with, I'm an environmental scientist with CDFA's Industrial Hemp Program, and I'm going to be discussing the agenda item to amend the methodology and procedures to update the list of approved cultivars, which is outlined in Section 4921, in Section 4921, Entitled 3 of the California Code of Regulations. And so this, along with the notice and agenda, the proposed language changes to this section was provided as an attachment. And so I'll go quickly as to what is currently in 4921 and then the proposed amendments that is currently shown here. So 4921 outlines section 4921A outlines the procedures to amend the list of approved cultivars. So that's to add or amend or remove any cultivars that's listed. So this requires the request from the board chair or any 4 members of the board to change the list. And that will then require a schedule of a public hearing to propose to consider a proposal to update the list. And so that notice and text of the proposal will be made available to the public no less than 30 days prior to the hearing. And that hearing would be a scheduled industrial hemp advisory board. So what we just recently did. And part of that hearing, there will be a presentation of the proposal of the updated list of approved cultivars, a presentation of the purpose for the update, and then an opportunity for public comment. After public comments are received, the board will then vote to either accept, amend, or amend and accept or deny the proposal for the recommendation to the secretary. Upon the recommendation and approval of the secretary, the department will then amend the list of approved cultivars and then submit this list to the Office of Administrative Law for file. As this section is exempt pursuant to section 81002 of the Food and Agriculture Code, and so it does not subject to any further review from the Office of Administrative Law. And then the department will then post this list of approved cultivars to its website and then provide electronic, or in this case, through our listserv, notification of amendments to the list of approved cultivars to all parties that requested the notification. And so, and then the second portion is the amendment to actually change the procedures to amend the list. So very similar, identical to that. Instead, in this one, the board will then, by motion, the board will then recommend to amend the methodology and procedures to subsection A, and then in consultation with the chair and the board chair, the department will then schedule a public hearing. And that would also be no less than 30 days prior to the hearing. So everything else mirrors, the public hearing would be a scheduled industrial hemp advisory board meeting. It will have a presentation. The presentation will include the purpose of the amendment and then an opportunity for public comments. And then once more, it is exempt from the, it's a file imprint. And so it is then submitted to the Office of Administrative Law, and then when it is posted, then the department will provide notification to all the stakeholders that receive our listserv notification. So right now, what we have as the amendment or the proposed amendments to the current regulations is to amend it to update to the current language that is found in the law. So right now, the only changes seen is that the word seed that is found in front of cultivars is removed, as the law has been updated to remove the word seed from cultivars.
Thank you, Locke. Any further discussion or questions from the board regarding this agenda item?
Rob Porcella here. I just definitely looking for any feedback from any other members that see any concern with this. To me, it looks like a very simple change that doesn't take a whole lot of thought to determine whether or not that's reasonable and acceptable to me. It seems on the surface fine, but if anyone has any other ideas, I'd definitely like to hear them.
Thank you, Rob. Do we have any further discussion or questions from the board regarding this agenda item?
Yes, I have Kevin Johnson, and I have, I know Rob has brought this up in the past, and but I really think the program needs a list of specific cultivars approved by CDFA that is updated every year and posted on the website. This is for farmers to choose from and for efficiency for the ag commissioners in the permitting process. And I think it would save a lot of money if the commissioners could just look on the website and see which specific strains or specific cultivars are approved. Is this something that staff can develop? And if not, then I'd like to help offer my help through a subcommittee to work on this with the help of staff. And would the board support this, putting this on the agenda for next time? Or possibly I could work with Rob through his committee of rules and regulations and develop a list of specific cultivars so that each time the ag commissioners don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Hey, Kevin, this is Josh Kress. So just very quickly, I appreciate the comments here. If we can hold off on further discussion until the next agenda item, which is the actual list itself.
Okay.
I think that conversation is a good one to have when we're talking about the amendments to the list itself. So this current agenda item in motion is to the methodology and procedure to amend the list. If you have any thoughts or suggestions on the procedure itself, please feel free to speak up now. It'd be a good time. I do want to note, just for the record very quickly, so the amendment to the methodology and procedure, the procedure that's listed in here, requires motion by the board. The motion by the board was made at the last board meeting on October 14th. So just a quick note on that. But yeah, if you've got any thoughts or comments on the methodology and procedure that's listed here, otherwise the additional discussion on the list itself would be good for the next agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wasn't sure which item number 4 and number 5 to bring this up at.
Yeah, no worries.
Thanks, Kevin. I just second what Rob said. This looks like an uncontroversial change. It looks like, if anything, it slightly expands the options available to farmers by taking away the word seed. But it doesn't look controversial at all. If anybody has an opinion to differ with that, I would definitely like to hear it as well.
Okay, well, it sounds like Rob, then you made a motion.
Did I? No, well, no.
A motion was made at the last meeting, is what Josh has said.
Okay, yeah, at the last
but
meeting.
do we need to hear from the public? Is there any public comment as well, Richard?
You can go, if you'd like to go to public comment first, you can. Otherwise, you can make a motion first and then go to public comment. We have to take public comment as part of the motion, no matter what.
Okay.
So there was a motion made at the last meeting, October 14th, and
yes. So Richard, so you're going to need so per the procedures that are in front of you, you're going to need a motion from the board and a second, and then we would go through the normal procedure on a board motion here to move forward on this.
Okay, do I have a motion from the board?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to adopt the.
And who made the motion? I can't.
Jack Norton.
Jack. Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have a second?
Rob Porchella, I'll second Jack's motion.
Okay. Should we go to public comments or should we take a vote, Josh?
So first, if there's any discussion by the board, it didn't sound like it, but open it up for discussion by the board, then public comments, and then a vote.
Okay, any further discussion from the board? Okay, let's go to public comments.
Richard, right now I do not see any hand raises or any comments provided through the chat box.
This is sounding very uncontroversial.
Yes. Okay, well, let's take a vote here. Van's not here, is he? I didn't hear him in the beginning. No. Okay, Lisa, are you in favor or oppose?
I apologize for the delay. I am in favor. Thank you.
Okay. How about Jack? Must be.
In favor.
And Rob?
Yes.
Okay, Vanessa,
In favor.
Richard in favor, Lucas?
Yes, in favor.
Okay, Kevin?
Also, yes, in favor.
Okay, it passes unanimously.
Richard, you skipped David Robinson.
Oh, David Robinson, excuse me. David?
Thanks, Richard. Yes.
Yes. Okay, it passes unanimously. Okay, then we'll move to the next, amend the list of approved cultivars. And that's going to be led by Locke.
Hi, everyone. So this is our list of approved cultivars. So with the list of approved cultivar, it's a list of where cultivars can be sourced from. And so that is in section 4920 of the Title III of California Code of Regulations. And so currently in it, it has 5 sources. The first source is seeds or propagative materials from a breeder, foundation, registered or certified seed stock from a seed certifying agency. Second is any seed and propagative materials that's produced in a quality assurance that is approved by a seed certifying agency. Third is industrial hemp seed or propagated materials produced by an authorized participant in a state industrial hemp agricultural pilot program in accordance with the 2014 Farm Bill. And that crop from which the seed or propagative materials were harvested from, it needed to test no more than the 0.3% THC on a dry weight basis in accordance with that state's regulatory authority. And then the commissioner would be notified of the importation of all the propagative materials into the county. And the fourth is any seeds or tissue culture that is imported from out of the country that meets federal importation requirements, and that crop from which the seeds or tissue culture were harvested from needed to have been tested by with a testing method approved by the Department of Agriculture in that country of origin, and it's found to be no more than 0.3% THC on a dry weight basis. And then the commissioner would be notified of the importation of those propagative materials. And then it also includes a definition for tissue culture. And then fifthly, it's industrial hemp seed or propagative materials that's actually produced in California in accordance with Division 24 of the Food and Agriculture Code and Chapter 8 of the Title III of the California Code of Regulations, which is the regulations for industrial hemp cultivation. And that crop from which the seed or propagative materials were harvested from should have been tested by a department-approved laboratory and is on no more than 0.3% THC on a dry weight basis. And then as for the amendment that is being proposed here is that we wanted to update it in accordance to what the changes are in regards to the federal, the changes that has been happening for hemp. So for section 4920A3 in regards to authorized participant in a state industrial hemp pilot program, in addition to the 2014 Farm Bill, we added also for any participant that is part of an approved state plan, tribal plan, or federal regulatory plan. So in accordance with the 2018 Farm Bill. And then the other amendment that you see is just minor amendments to kind of clarify the importation requirements as well from propagative materials that are going between counties. As that is also a requirement that is already pre-existing. So Richard, I'll give that back to you.
Okay, thank you, Locke. Any further discussion or questions from the board regarding this? I guess I don't hear any.
Does anybody see anything controversial about this? I feel like we're in the same boat on these amendments.
So this is Josh. I'll just make one quick note. Keeping in mind what Kevin had recently talked about. So if the board would like to move forward with making these minor changes now, and then would like to further explore and recommend additional changes later, that's certainly at the board's discretion. And we are fortunate to be able to have a relatively efficient process to be able to make these changes to the list. So just keeping that in mind, that there are a couple of different ways the board can move forward here, whether you want to discuss additional changes now, accept these relatively minor changes now, and then have some additional conversation and discussion in the future, and have some time to further explore that. There's some options on the table for you.
Well, on that note, Josh, thanks for bringing that up. I would like to talk about Kevin's idea, because it's something that Rob and I have talked with you about in our task force, our rules and regulations task force. And just to bring everyone up to speed on what we've generally talked about in that task force meeting regarding this item, is that the way we see it, Kevin, is that the section 4920, the list of approved cultivars, is not in itself something that we want to change. It broadly allows hemp farmers about the widest range of seed stock available that we could use to grow. It's very it allows us a great deal in that sense. But the idea of perhaps having some other list that was perhaps it's called a pre-approved list, pre-verified list, that did change year to year, very much on point with your idea, in conjunction with this one, that would help streamline things for farmers and for agricultural commissioners. We see that it could be something to be functional, but not as an actual change to this list to limit the scope of this list in any way.
Yes, I agree with that.
Do we have any further discussion or questions from the board regarding this agenda item? Do we have any motion regarding this agenda item?
I'll make the motion to approve the changes.
And excuse me, and who am I talking to?
Jack Norton. Sorry, Richard.
Jack. Okay. Okay. Don't have your voice down yet. Do we have a second?
Rob Porchella here. I'll second the motion.
Okay. Do we have public comments?
We do have a hand raise, Richard.
Yes,
so we have
okay.
a hand raise from Justin. Justin, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
I'm just looking at the process. It seems like it makes a pathway for varieties to become approved on some sort of list. Just based on the feedback that we've gotten from a lot of the state regulators, whether it's local, county, or statewide, and after looking at the financial burden going through this verification process for varieties, my question would be to the board, if there is language in this motion here, or if there would be something additional that we would need to add in here to be able to work and create a path for a one-time verification, or something where any variety that has been approved doesn't have to be continually reapproved every time a commissioner or regulator looks to re-verify a variety if it's already been approved. So I would just urge the board to maybe look and see if there is language within this motion that creates the pathway so we could work to develop a process of verification to reduce the burden on the regulators to have to continually re-verify the same varieties over and over. I believe Texas, the local commissioners had recommended looking at Texas as they have approved variety process.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comments?
I do not see any other hand raises, Richard, and I don't see any comment. Oh, we do have a hand raised.
Okay, thank you.
So Josh Snyder, I went ahead and asked to if you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi all, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The concern I have with this fixation on lists is that it provides an endorsement by the State Department of Food and Ag of specific varieties and creates a false sense of assurance that these varieties are and will be compliant. AOSCA and other seed certification agencies take zero consideration for cannabinoid levels. And that is the issue of concern. So I question, I understand because I helped USDA craft their interim, final, and final plan, as others participated in as well. And so the approach when the law was written was based on the idea that there would be clean and consistent seed that would breed true from year to year. Our experience in cultivation since the 2018 Farm Bill has shown that that is generally not the case. And there's a wide variation in cannabinoid levels produced by the plants grown from seed, depending on the lot and the entire process. And so the seed certifying agencies work to certify the process, much like organic cultivation, but do not guarantee an outcome. I believe that this creates an unrealistic expectation by farmers that they've got a safe harbor in choosing something off the list. And until the genetics are trued up and improved, it is something that should be approached with trepidation. And so the approach that we've suggested and has been reliable is the farmer presents a certificate of analysis for their variety in order to register it. And once that's registered, perhaps the state gives it a serial number or a code number so that other county departments of ag can check into a database to see if it's already been approved and not have to duplicate that work. So I just think that we need to be cautious and consider how farmers will see this. If we're really trying to do what's best for the farmer, we need to provide a system where they understand that they're responsible for the outcome of their plants and not going to have a shortcut or an easier way forward based on ordering off of a list that the state is supposedly curating.
That's a great point, Josh. That's very interesting. I'm encouraged to see that we're all on the same page with generally how this secondary list might work. And it seems like, you know, the issues are figuring out the details essentially.
Much of the problem, I think, comes from the make work that is required. My nursery does young plant production. And so once our COAs are approved for our varieties, the state then re-vets all the COAs for our customers. And that doesn't make any sense because sometimes they use different standards. And so we had instances where other counties were like, no, those COAs aren't valid. And I'm saying, well, guys, you just approved them 2 weeks ago. So that approval process has created complexities that I believe add headaches and costs for both CDFA and the counties, and the farmers are often left stuck in the middle where everybody just shrugs and the farmer says, well, what am I supposed to do? And that's why I think we go back to a system where if you can present a valid COA and you meet the other standards, why are we overcomplicating this? The compliance testing at the end is the final check, and that truly is the only thing that matters.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, hello, this is Vanessa. I agree with Josh in regards of we need to be practical and effective when it comes to registering the cultivars with the counties. Same thing with the same experience where some of our seeds were approved already, like in 3-4 counties, and then Kern County comes back and says, I need something else. So it's not practical, and as we have seen, financially, we're not being very effective neither. So I will suggest to have the ones it is approved, same thing, to be approved everywhere else. And talking about also what Josh mentioned on the having a list, I agree with that. Unless we are also testing the levels of THC and everything, I don't see how the state could endorse the cultivars.
Thank you, Vanessa.
Richard,
Yes.
I'd like to say it sounds like the board may want to task the Rules and Regulation Task Force with fleshing out this idea, seeking input and bringing something back. That's what it sounds like to me. It seems like everybody wants this idea of a secondary list. It makes a lot of sense, but how the implementation would work is really the question.
All right. So, do we have any other public comments?
Yes, we do, Richard. We have
Okay.
a comment from Richmond. Wayne, I unmuted you. If you can just unmute yourself.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. Rather than reiterate all of the fine comments that have preceded me, I just want to, on behalf of the California Hemp Association, of which I am president and represent a lot of farmers and processors, want to reiterate my support for the comments made by Josh and Justin and Vanessa and Jack. And I think that we need to really delve into this a little bit more. And this assumption or endorsement concept that Josh brought up is quite valid when people have no other information. They do and will look at it this way. And I speak as a licensed seed seller in California, member CCIA and the California Seed Association, that really is not for farmers who are getting into this marketplace for the first time. That does seem like an endorsement. So I really do think that we need to look at that. And at the end of the day, it's all about the THC level at the time of harvest and nothing else. So let's keep that in mind, and just want to give our support for the comments made by the previous speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Do we have
Richard,
any?
I don't see any more. Yes, I don't see any more hand raises or any comments in the chat box.
Okay, thank you, Kapua. Well, we do have a motion, and we have a second on the motion. So we should vote on the motion. Lisa Herbert? Well, are you there, Lisa? I didn't hear her.
I have not heard Lisa.
Okay, well, let's
Lisa,
move
you
on.
should be unmuted.
Yeah, yes, thank you. I'm having trouble with getting unmuted. Thank you very much. Lisa Herbert votes yes.
Jack Norton,
Yes.
Rob Priscilla,
Yes.
Vanessa Ramirez,
Yes.
Dave Robinson,
Yes.
yes. Richard Soria, yes. Lucas Wilson,
Yes.
Kevin Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Moving on to update on the program activities on the state plan. And Josh will lead us there.
Thank you. Sorry, just give me a second. I got a notification showing up on my computer that made everything else disappear. All right, yep. Thank you, everybody. Again, this is Joshua Kress, Branch Chief for Pest Exclusion with CDFA. Just a very quick update on the state plan, and then I believe Locke will be providing some additional updates on this agenda item as well. So again, very quickly, we continue to work, as was discussed at the previous meeting, on submission and obtaining approval of the state plan. So just a reminder for everyone, under the 2018 Farm Bill and subsequent regulations by USDA, CDFA, and all states are required to submit a state regulatory plan for hemp production for approval by USDA. And so CDFA has continued to meet with USDA to go through the provisions that are in our laws and regulations and determine any additional needs to ensure approval. At this point, those conversations are complete. Draft documents are complete and are currently being routed for signature prior to formal submission to USDA. Once that formal submission occurs, again, we will be notifying the board and the public of that formal submission, and then we'll proceed with rulemaking to adopt any changes made to regulations in order to actually implement the plan. At this point, the changes made will include incorporation of any necessary language for federal compliance, and then some additional edits will be made to the regulation just for clarity as we are making amendments to the plan. And so that's where we're at, is that it's currently being routed for signature and will be submitted soon, once again, for resubmission to USDA. And then just a quick note that regardless of this process, it does not preclude the board from having further discussions and recommending any additional changes to existing regulations. If the board does make any additional recommendations for changes, which I know Jack and Rob will be discussing shortly, then any changes that are proposed, in addition to having to go through rulemaking, we would also need to seek review and approval by USDA as part of our state plan, following the process that's established in federal regulation. And so that's my quick update.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. That's Rob Porchella. I have concerns on on the state plan that I just want to share. Been contacted by several farmers now, so I know it's affecting multiple large farms out there. Without that state plan approval, they are not able to get federal funding for grows that they're planning for this coming season. And I'm just wondering, do we have anything more specific that, as far as a signature date, when that will happen? And then it sounds like it needs a signature. We're awaiting a signature in CDFA, and then from there, then it gets sent to USDA, and then there's obviously some period of time in which the review has to happen, and then the approval. But can you comment a little bit more, elaborate a little bit more, so I can understand, and the rest of the people can kind of understand what that timeline looks like? It's definitely information that I have people awaiting after this meeting that I want to be able to share and update, to the best of my ability.
Sure, I can answer that real quick, Rob. So I do not have a specific timeline, excuse me, as far as when the plan will be submitted to USDA. So yes, we do have some items that need internal review and signature. We have already done a lot of that work internally with CDFA. And so we expect that process to go fairly quickly. But again, we did have ongoing conversations with USDA to try to make sure that we are going to be able to move through their approval process as quickly as possible. And so we want to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed as it moves along. So it is currently being routed for signature right now, the full package. It will be submitted soon, although I do not have a date that I can provide at this time. According to the federal laws and regulations, USDA has 60 days to review. However, they have set their own deadline of the end of the calendar year, and we have already provided all of the provisions that are being included to USDA informally already for their review and for discussion. So we anticipate that even though there is a 60-day process included in their laws and regulations, we do not anticipate taking anywhere near that full 60 days to get final sign-off from USDA. We expect that end should be able to move fairly quickly. So again, I do not have a specific timeline that I can provide as far as when those signatures will be finalized. However, there is urgency both at CDFA and USDA to get California's plan approved and get the process moving before the end of the year and moving as quickly as possible. And we certainly understand and appreciate the impacts to growers on that side of things. So we are moving as quickly as possible.
I'm just curious when you say awaiting signature, I thought you said signature, but then you said signatures. Whose signatures go on that before it's submitted? Do you know?
I would have to check the actual documents, but there is a certification from the secretary that will be included as part of the package. With the original submittal process, there were other outside agencies that we were legally required to run the plan by prior to submitting to USDA. However, at this point, it's all internal at CDFA.
Thank you, Josh. Do we have any
Yeah, Vanessa, I have a question.
or questions from the board regarding this item?
Yes, this is Vanessa. I
Mhm.
have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How is there, and perhaps you mentioned it, where can we find a draft of the plan that you submitted? And I imagine that once you get the signature, it has to be implemented. And how do we need to create a subcommittee so we can help with that, give advice for the implementation of some of the regulations?
Yeah, so Vanessa, the plan itself will be the current laws and regulations with whatever amendments are needed to comply with the federal regulations. And so we've incorporated changes into that. We will also be, again, doing a little bit of adding a little bit of clarification on a couple of provisions, but CDFA is not planning on making any major changes, major programmatic changes to the way the program is being administered as part of this process. So upon USDA approval, and actually we'll hopefully be able to start the process prior to USDA approval, we will be proposing those regulations formally for public comment and going into the rulemaking process. However, as part of the rules and regulations task force that Jack and Rob will be reporting on in a little bit, they are taking a look at all of our existing regulations and reviewing them to make additional changes. So all of our regulations were developed either based on existing California law, existing federal laws or regulations, or based off of prior discussions by the board. However, we know there are a number of items that need additional clarification and additional work, and we appreciate that the board is working with us to try to make those amendments and make the regulations as functional as possible and as easy as possible to administer, where it's functional and works for growers and regulators. So that is going to be an ongoing process, and regardless of federal approval or even the end of this upcoming rulemaking period or additional rulemaking periods, we understand that their regulations are made to be changed, and so the CDFA does, commit to and intend to continue to working with the board to continue to making changes as necessary.
Thank you, Josh. Do we have any further discussion or questions from the board regarding this agenda item? Do we have any public comments on?
Richard, I have a question.
Okay.
Jack Norton. Josh, is that presentation available for us? I don't believe I got it as an attachment or anything. I just like.
Which
I'd
presentation
like to have
you're referring to?
That the one you just presented, the PowerPoints you just presented on the number of registrants, for example.
Oh, Locke will be bringing that up. She will still be presenting that, and yes, that can be made. That will be made available.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, we still have one part of this agenda item left, Richard.
Okay.
Does look like we have a public member with their hand raised at this point if there's no further discussion by the board on the first part of this agenda item.
Okay, then I guess we go to the next part.
If you want to go to there is one hand raised for public comment.
Okay.
If you want to go to that prior, it's at your discretion if you want to go to that first.
Yeah, let's listen.
Since these are two separate topics.
Hey, Justin, I went ahead and unmute you. If you can go ahead and speak.
Thank you. Justin Eve with Hemp Farmers Guild. We had a question. Are we able to acquire, maybe I missed it and maybe it's already public. Is there a digital copy of the state plan in its current form available that we could obtain a copy of that digitally? And then the other part of my comment or question is that working through the state plan, would it be possible for a committee to be formed to be able to resolve and work on the state plan by the board so they can ensure that in a timely fashion, the state plan gets worked through and approved by the USDA?
Yeah, Justin, so I'll go ahead and answer. I believe that was part of Vanessa's question there as well. I apologize. So currently the draft that's being routed through the department is considered an internal deliberative document and is not available for public posting yet. When it is finalized and submitted to USDA, it will be a public document and CDFA will make it available, as we did the first time around with the previously submitted state plan. And so that will be posted and available for comment or available for public viewing. Additionally, again, as part of the rules and regulations task force, the state plan is our laws and regulations. And so Jack and Rob have already been assigned to continue to look at those in their current or any amended form. And we'll continue to look at those, but I don't know if they have any additional thoughts or comments on that topic.
Okay, great. And I don't know if you can still hear me. It sounds like then the board had motioned to obtain a copy of that public document for the state plan in its current form, correct?
Sorry, Justin, I couldn't understand your question. Could you repeat it?
Josh, what Justin's asking, this is Rob, why you mentioned in the public can't have a copy of this, but us as IHAB members should be able to have a copy and be reviewing it and kind of staying ahead of whatever changes are being made in there. Is this not something that we as the board can work on in one of our task forces?
Exactly, and I guess the question is how do we obtain a copy? Since it is, I guess, a public plan, I'm assuming that the board would have to then motion to obtain a copy of the state plan in its current form, even though you guys are in the process of working that through. From our understanding of an advisory board is that the rules and regulations should be reviewed by the board before being released to the public. So just wondering how to obtain a copy of that, if that needs to be done by a motion of the board, and what that process would be to be able to get the Rules and Regulation Committee to work on that, or also obtain a copy of that as board members.
All right, thank you both. So just to clarify, so the current plan is still a draft document. We would have to investigate further if that's something that we could work directly with board members on. I don't know the answer to that, but Rob, if that's something the Rules and Regulations Committee or Rules and Regulations Task Force would like to explore further with us, we can explore that further. However, again, anything that's in the state plan are things that have already been made public, with the exception of changes that are necessary to comply with federal regulation. And so there won't be anything that, or at least there shouldn't be anything that is significantly different from things that are already available for public view and public comment. However, that's something that we can investigate further. So Rob, Jack, if you want to discuss that further either now or during the Rules and Regulations Task Force agenda item, we can discuss that and see what you guys would like to do to move forward.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
What
I mean,
would like to move forward.
do I need to move to obtain a copy or put this on our task force? Because I really believe it's something that we should have access to and be, cooperatively. I mean, hindsight, we should have been probably doing this before. And at this point, we're kind of just looking at what's already going to be submitted. But I'd rather be looking at it now than waiting until, after the fact. So I would move to try to, either put this on our task. Let me move to obtain a copy so that we can, look at this on our Rules and Regs task force.
Sounds
Yeah,
good. A motion's not needed for that, but we're happy to try to work with you. Again, because something is an internal deliberative draft from CDFA, there are rules and restrictions on what we can provide and what we can't and what that looks like. But we can explore that further and discuss that with you as part of the task force.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I'd like to just remind the board, the Rules and Regulations Task Force exists, and if there's something that they'd like to task us with doing, we're happy to take that on. And we do have a report that we'll be giving later today and be accepting feedback and looking for input.
Okay, do we have any other further discussion or questions from the board regarding this agenda item?
Richard, we
Okay.
do have a hand raised from Wayne Richmond.
Okay. Go ahead, Wayne.
Wayne,
Hi,
you can go
good
ahead and
morning.
unmute yourself.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, yes. Hi, Wayne Richmond, President, California Hemp Association. I think the underlying concern here is I hear it and I feel it from our members and some of the comments that were just expressed is there seems to be a lack of transparency in this process, Joshua, and telling us whether it's the committee who might have some limited access when it's deemed appropriate versus the public. Your comment has been repeatedly that we will all get a chance to look at it and make public comments after you have submitted it to the USDA. That's not how this process should work if it's going to be transparent and inclusive. And I'm wondering, where does that last piece come in, regulatorily speaking, that allows that to happen? That's kind of like, well, we're going to submit it and then we're going to ask for your comments, but we already submitted it, so it really doesn't matter. So therein lies the concerns for members of the California Hemp Association, should be concerns for everybody listening in on this call right now. And it does sound like it's of concern to several of the board members. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Do we have any more public comments, Kapua?
Richard, I don't see any hand raises or any comments in the chat box.
Okay. Well, moving on, we have the revenue and budget, and that's going to be led by Josh.
Actually, Richard, it will be led by me. Hey, everyone. Once again, I'm Rob Fan. I'm an environmental scientist with CDFA's Industrial Hemp Program. So I'm here to provide the update on the revenue and budget for our program. So I just want to go ahead and start with the registration activities we have had as of November 15th. So as of November 15th, we have 273 registrants in 32 counties. We have almost 400 registered sites in which 6,522 acres are registered. Currently, for counties with the most registrants, we have San Bernardino with 72 registrants and San Diego with 36. And then counties with the most registered acres, we have Riverside at 1,271 acres and Fresno with 1,223 acres. As just a note to everyone, that we do have a monthly registration summary available on our website that contains this information as well as further details into each county. So as for the revenue update, for the registration fees that we collect that the County Agricultural Commissioner forwards to us, since the last meeting, we had provided up to June 30th of 2021. So since that date, we have received payments for this current fiscal year of 2021, 21-22, and that is $87,300, and that includes. This is only fees that we received up to November 10th, 2021. So since the start of this program, which was back in April 30th of 2019, we have received a little bit over $1,300,000. As for the budget, as for the expenditures we have had for this program, here you'll see is that we have the budget up to the current fiscal year. Unfortunately, we were unable to update the figures that where we had previously presented due to our financial reports not being finalized yet. However, we did update where we could. And so for 18-19, we had expenditures of a little over $450,000. In 19-20, we had expended almost $2 million. And then for prior year, this is based off of our mid-year projections, but we did update it for the cost recovery that we had received. So we're anticipating about $1.7 million being expended for prior year. Now for this current fiscal year, this pertains, my apologies, this is what our approved budget for this year. And so that differs from prior year, from our previous meeting where we had presented on an estimated amount. So for the current approved budget for this program, it is a little bit over $2.1 million. So what does that mean for our fund condition and our ending reserve balance as of right now? So for this, in prior year, so at the end of June 30th, 2021, we are expecting a deficit of almost $3 million, and it's anticipating any kind of changes that might happen. But with the current year's budget, if we do expend it, we are expecting our deficit to be now around $4.6 million. So generally, the department recommends our program to maintain a reserve balance of 1/3 to 1/2 of its annual expenditures. And that concludes my presentation for the revenue and budget.
Thank you, Locke. Any further discussion or questions from the board regarding this agenda item?
Hello, this is Vanessa again. Well, it is really sad to see we are in the red so bad, but I would like to actually be able to see this report, the financial reports and the budgeting summary on every single meeting that we have moving forward. I think it's very important that we don't lose sight and put it on the back burner. So would I need to make a motion, or that's you, Richard?
Do we need a motion to have this on the previous or future agendas, Josh, monthly?
No, you do not need a motion to set future agenda items. And Rob, you may want to speak to this a little bit more during your next agenda item as well, as far as your intent on the budget and fee task force. and what you would like to see presented or what you would be presenting in future meetings. But no, you do not need a motion on that. That's something that can continue to be updated as updates are available and continued represented regardless.
Is is there can I get any clarification on what the increase almost tripled of the operating expenses and equipment or is forecasted to for 21-22?
So that's the budget amount. Locke, I don't know if you have any information on that. My guess is that it's the program overhead finally starting to catch up with the program, but I don't know if you have any additional information or if we do at this point. Just a reminder, this is the approved budget for the current year. It is not necessarily the anticipated expenditures. In fact, the anticipated expenditures for the program side of things would be quite a bit lower, seeing as we do not have anywhere near all the positions filled for the program. But I don't know if any staff have any feedback at this time, or if that's something that we would need to follow up and investigate further and follow up next time.
Well, Josh, the not having all the positions filled, that would come under personal services, wouldn't it? And that looks to be a fairly static at around $600,000 a year for the past couple of years.
Correct. So yeah, last year up through almost the end of last fiscal year, the program was not fully staffed, but mostly fully staffed. However, at this point, we've had multiple staff members leave and have not filled all of those positions. And so in the end, the overall personal services for fiscal year 21-22, I will tell you will be lower than that. I don't know how much. We have not done our current year projections yet, but we will have updated figures. I don't know if we'll have the projections in time for the next meeting, kind of depending on where it falls within the budget cycle. But that's something that we'll provide to the board once we do those projections, usually somewhere in the middle of the fiscal year. So somewhere in around December, January, February, somewhere in there, kind of depending on the overall budget cycle.
Thank you.
Do we have any further discussions or questions from the board regarding this item? Do we have any public comments on this agenda item? Do you see any hands up, Kapua? I guess not. Well, then let's move on to the report from the Budget and Registration Fee Task Force.
Actually,
Richard, it looks like Lisa.
Oops.
Yeah, Lisa Herbert, you've got your hand up. It looks like you're
Yes.
unmuted.
Yes, thank you. I'm now unmuted. I would like an actual accounting of the county agreements, just because it states that you budgeted $1,168,000 doesn't mean that's what the county's actually claimed against their county agreement. So that would be nice on future agendas if we could see what you're actually paying the counties.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for that insight, Lisa.
Okay. Do you think we could have that, Josh, on the next agendas? The county agreements?
Yeah, and I can defer to staff, but I don't see any problem with being able to provide a slide that has the total county agreement amount versus what's actually been paid.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more discussion from the board regarding this item? Okay, do we have any hands up, Kapua?
No, Richard, I don't see any comments in the chat box nor any hand raises.
Okay, let's move on to the report from the Budget Registration Fees Committee. And I guess you're gonna lead this, Rob?
Yeah, that would be me. Thanks, Richard. I will make this pretty quick because actually I don't have a presentation, and a couple of the previous comments let me address, Vanessa, what you stated as far as having the updates regularly and having current information. That was the point of establishing this committee, as far as I was concerned. Having growers pay the registration fees to pay for the program, I think it's only the right thing to do, to display this information, see where we're at, where we're going, and do that regularly. And Lisa, thank you for your information and your input. That's a critical point, and I'd love to collaborate and hear more from you on what things you would like to see on there. I think that's an important point, is how is each individual county doing. The information that I got several weeks ago was not current, and so what Locke just presented was kind of news to me at this point. I did not have that information previously, but thank you for presenting that. You kind of did my job for me as far as I'm concerned at this meeting, going over that. And really, that's what I was looking to do as part of this task force. And that's what was done. And aside from, a few improvements that we'll make to it going forward, I think, that's really all I have as far as, what the intent was of the task force and the information that was provided. I'm glad to see that it was updated. I was a little disappointed that I was going to be presenting information from back in February, but I see it was updated. And so thank you guys for that. I think it's very important that we do have current information so we can see what the state of the department is currently in. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Do we have any further discussion or questions from the board regarding this item?
Kevin Johnson here. I'd like just to say that I support the continuing efforts to look at a fee structure that doesn't overburden the farmers.
I appreciate that, Kevin. I'd like to, Jack Norton here, I'd like to add a question. As we go deeper into the red, what happens? And there's some bottom, right? We're not a private company, we won't go bankrupt, but what kind of issues are we going to run into?
Good question. Do you have an answer for us there, Josh?
Yeah, so Jack, I assume that's a question for me. Sorry, it took me a second to unmute here. That's a good question. I don't have any exact answers for you. I will say that the department has an obligation to establish a fee that covers our costs and to manage our funds appropriately. And so the department will need to take action. What action is taken, I can't speak to. Again, I covered it at the beginning, but the funding available to this program as authorized by the legislature is our registration fees. And so we will continue to work on that and move forward on that. But I don't have any answers to you as far as any additional actions that would be taken. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know exactly what that would look like. Yeah, sorry, I can't be more help there. But we do have an obligation to make sure that the programs are paid for, and we'll continue to work to address those. And appreciate the board's help and support in trying to address those.
Hey, Jack, it's Rob Porchella. So on the task force meeting, which I think you jumped off the call before this part, but I had discussed this with CDFA, I think after you were off the call, but
I was
something that that I would like to see, and I know I believe we've talked about this in the meetings before, but is looking to find a champion that we can in legislation have some forgiveness of this budget so that we can wipe the slate clean going forward, have some restructure where we're doing a much better job now that we kind of got a foundation laid for this, limit the expenses going forward. And Andreas Borges is the chair of the Senate Ag Committee in California. I happen to be in the 8th District here in Clovis, and considering how to try to bring this to the attention of Andreas and see if we can't get some allocation of funds to CDFA, Pest Exclusion Division, and try to sew up some of the budget deficit that was, run so high as the program was implemented, and everyone was kind of trying to figure out what direction to go with it. So I would kind of like to put that out there to all those listening and in the industry and everything, that I think we should, as an industry, kind of try to help clean this up. And I think finding, help in legislation might be the way to go about it. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, it is my understanding, after being part of the task force, and when I work with Michelle, Locke is in this call, and also Lisa, it is that we don't reimburse, there are not enough funds to reimburse the counties. The counties can decide to ban hemp, and that will be one of the consequences of not being able to pay.
Thank you, Vanessa. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Right. Thank you.
Rob, given that there are several new members at the on the board today, would you be interested in soliciting a second member of your task force? Is that something you'd be interested in?
I definitely need help with that. I was the sole member on the task force as Richard helped implement that at the last meeting, and absolutely any help I can get. I'm running multiple companies myself, so that my time is limited on what I can put into these task forces. So any help I can get, I'm happy to have.
Are any of the new, because this we did, just so everybody has on the same page, Rob was the sole member interested in being on the budget and registration task force at the meeting it was formed. I believe that was the last meeting. And so if any of the established members, it's already clear that they were not interested in being on the task force. But if a new member was interested, you should come forth.
The only one, I think that's Kevin at this point, that's able to, well, I don't know, actually I'm not clear on that. Are the other 3 members even able to offer up at this point or not? I don't know.
Kevin Johnson.
Yeah, this is Josh. So yeah, the other members, because you're discussing actions that would be taken after the board meeting in preparation for the next one. So any of the other future members could certainly volunteer at this point to meet with you once they have completed everything and are fully able to participate as a board member, so that way they can participate at the next meeting and present with you.
Kevin Johnson here. I would be more interested in being on the Rules and Regulations Task Force as opposed to the budget.
Thank you, Jack. Or Kevin. Thank you, Kevin. Excuse me. Do we have any further discussion from the board regarding this agenda item?
Just to add on Kevin's point, like, let's talk about that on item number 8, and I appreciate your interest, Kevin.
Okay. So Kevin, you'll be on the, did you want to be on the registration task force?
Yeah.
Yes, the rules and registration. If I am needed.
Yeah, Josh can clarify, but I believe that is not the smallest detail. It's a bit of a move, because that would move for the task force from being 2 members to 3 members, which would mean it would need official noticing and being a public meeting. It would no longer be a task force, it'd be a subcommittee. This is something we should talk about in item 8.
Yeah, so Richard, Kevin,
you're correct there.
Yeah, Kevin's interested in the next agenda item, so let's go ahead and hold off, and we can have some further discussion as part of that agenda item. and go ahead and wrap up this one first.
Right. Do we have any other further discussion or questions from the board regarding the budget items? Any public comments on this agenda item?
Richard, I don't see any hand raised or any written comments.
Okay, let's move on to number 8, report from the Rules and Regulation Task Force.
Okay,
And this is Rob and Jack.
Yeah, Rob, if you don't mind, I'll take the lead and just shout out if you want to interrupt me on anything or add to anything.
Please do.
Okay, so I'd like to talk about several items as the agenda lists items inside CCR Articles 2 and 3. Just as a general outline of what we'd like to talk about. We could maybe have a very brief discussion about the general purpose of the Rules and Regulations Task Force. It should be pretty self-explanatory, but I think that's worthwhile. And then essentially what we wanted to do at this meeting was bring forth items in the rules and regulations that we had identified as points that could be improved upon per se, seek feedback from the board on these items that we've identified, solicit the board for any other items that they have identified that they would like us to research and report back on. And then at a later meeting, given some direction from the board, work on those items that the board has deemed we should work on to develop some language that might improve them. So this is kind of a initial findings type of meeting, type of presentation. So going forth on the general purpose, and we're seeking input here, but we think that the broader goal of the Rules and Regulations Task Force is to provide input on rules and regulations in order to promote a successful industry for California hemp farmers. The task force could have periodic reporting back to the board on potential modifications of rules and regulations and work with CDFA staff and others outside of board meetings toward this goal. As a task force, having under 3 members, it allows us to meet more informally and be a little more nimble. So just going forward on the items that are on the agenda, I'll recap or I'll summarize them before going into a little more detail. So some priorities we've identified this far that we can present to the board, and then seeking your input, work more on them towards a resolution that we would agree upon, and later present that to the board for to make a motion and recommend to the secretary a change. So in Article 2 is the regulations for industrial hemp cultivation. In the new board members packet that was presented earlier, there was a great summary of how our current rules and regulations work. We've identified issues on production reporting, specifically the sampling timeline, some duplicate information in the sampling request and pre-harvest report forms. And then in section 4942 on regulatory sampling and testing, issues with the approved testing method for testing industrial hemp for THC concentration. And then in Article 3, the article on abatement and enforcement, issues with language regarding crop remediation and destruction, specifically the voluntary destruction of industrial hemp crops, and generally the destruction language in the CDFA regulations. So that's what we'll talk about. And if anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free to jump in, because we're really interested in your all's opinions on these issues. But I'll start from the top then and get into the details. So Article 2, Section 4940, if staff could maybe bring that up, that's not too hard, right? The sampling timeline. I have the quote here that I'll let you bring it up. Perfect, thank you. Okay, right there on top, A1, samples shall be collected no more than 11 calendar days prior to the anticipated harvest start date listed on the pre-harvest report. So what we found with this is, this 11-day sampling language is unnecessarily restrictive. That's our initial findings. Anticipated harvest start date is a really speculative. I don't know if any other farmers have run into issues with this. It's a guessing game. We can't predict the weather and a million other issues as farmers that we have to deal with. And in our personal experience, my personal experience, our county wanted to restrict regulatory sampling and testing of our planting lots to within 11 days of this speculative date, which made a lot of logistical problems itself. So we've identified that as something that we could improve upon and that is unnecessarily restrictive. Has anybody else from the board had any issues with this, or I'd like to seek input on that section, that item?
Kevin Johnson here. Yeah, what I found is that the rule or the changes keep on changing seemingly every year, and so every year we have to kind of squeeze in how we're going to work this in and to fit in with our testing and harvesting and pre-harvest notification. So it's kind of like trying to refigure it out every year. That's my only thing. It could be a simpler process somehow.
Absolutely. Yeah, it seems like just not locking us into this anticipated harvest start date. I mean, there's some obvious changes. The language itself says samples shall be collected no more than 11 days prior. The shall is makes it that it must be. That language could be modified so that it was a guideline, or the 11 calendar days, however that was picked out for whatever reason. That could be made a longer time period, which would give more space to farmers. I mean, I'm sure farmers have thought everybody's farm before has said, oh, we're going to start harvest on Monday, and Monday Sunday a big rainstorm comes, and like we had this year, we had early rain, and maybe stops everything for a week or two, and suddenly 11 days just shrinks to almost nothing when you can finally get back out in the field. And so we've identified this as an issue, and unless the board objects, we would like to research our options, more specific options for amending that language if there's no other input from the board.
I'll just mention, Jack, that, yeah, I agree with you, and that we had discussed about how confusing the language was, the 11 days. I think even when I talked to Libby at Fresno County Ag, she had mentioned that like her interpretation was that, well, you could just go out and as long as one plant was cut down, then, you were okay because you began the harvest. And so by cutting one plant, And it's like, well, really now, this isn't, there's obviously a lot of confusion with it. So I think it should be worked on so that it's not open for different interpretations. And that the intent
Absolutely.
of what that is there and is, because I'm not even sure what the intent of the 11 days is, honestly.
Totally.
And, I've been kind of obviously working on this with you, but I still haven't. You've got 30 days prior to your pre-harvest that you have to let the county know, okay, in 30 days, I plan on doing my pre-harvest. Then you do your pre-harvest. Then you have 30 days to harvest, but you also have an 11-day deal in there too. And it's like, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Very confusing.
Absolutely. Yeah. As you guys can see, hopefully everyone can see how problematic this language can be. That's a great point, Rob.
Yeah, good point.
So unless there's any more input from the board on this item, we'll move forward and we will look at prospective amendments and ways to solve this issue that we've identified.
Sounds good.
Great. Thank you. So then one other piece that I wanted to just go over quickly is yes.
Yeah, this is Lisa Herbert. Can I get clarification from CDFA on the 11 days? Because the ag commissioner has 24 hours after pulling the sample to get the sample to the lab. And then the lab has 10 days, to finish their results. So that is 11 days. So is that the thinking behind the regulations as they stand? I'd like CDFA to clarify.
Yeah, so Lisa, that's my understanding, is that was the intent, was that the 11 days is to ensure that there's sufficient time to get the test result and get it back to the grower prior to starting harvest. Because under California law, you're not allowed to start harvest until you receive that passing test report. And so that's where the 11-day time frame came in, is to allow sufficient time for that. But we appreciate the additional investigation and consideration by the board, especially based off of experiences since that was put into place and any improvements that can be made there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Josh. Yeah, that's helpful. It seems like that would then be a no less than 11 calendar days scenario. Maybe I'm confused there. Not a no more than 11 calendar days to accommodate that. But
yeah, and the intent now, thanks Lisa for chiming in on that, because it does make more sense. The intent is that you don't get to harvest your crop until you've received a COA showing that it's passing. That's the point of it. So the language should really be kind of crafted around receiving that actual official pre-harvest certification, and that really that pre-harvest certification is to not require more than 11 days. But that's kind of on the lab at that point, but something to the effect that you're not able to be harvesting until you've received your COA, I guess. Because if you obviously started harvesting your crop early and then come to find out your crop was hot, well, now we got a whole situation arising. And I think that's the only thing it's basically trying to prevent, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's a great idea of maybe maintaining the intent, but making the application more practical. That's a good point, Rob.
Kevin Johnson here. We've never gotten our tests back from the lab on time. Labs are always busy that time of the year. So I think this year it was 4, maybe 5 days after it was required. So, it just makes it kind of a crunch time when you get your report, days late before you can harvest.
I will mention something too, which is on this topic, and Lisa just mentioned the 24-hour to the lab from the time of sample taken. Again, when I went down to Fresno County, talked with one of theirs, Libya Lett, she stated in summertime here in Fresno, it's pretty hot. Sometimes they're going out first thing in the morning, 7 a.m., 7:30, 8 o'clock, meeting a grower on their farm, taking their samples so they could have it in the 8 o'clock hour. The 24-hour turnaround to delivery at the lab is not realistic, because even if they overnight it, which, you know, that's what they have to do, those deliveries don't come in until mid-morning. So they're technically in violation if they do an early morning sample, which then obviously creates a potential situation that they did not fulfill their duties because they did not get that sample delivered within 24 hours. And her request was that should be expanded to maybe 30 hours or something of that nature to give the additional time needed for overnight delivery, because overnight deliveries don't show up first thing in the morning.
Good point.
Yeah, it seems like that could vary very much between counties, as there are different distances to labs and issues of whether maybe the lab comes out to take the sample, or the county takes the sample and then delivers to the lab. Seems like there could be a lot there. Justin, you have a comment? I see Justin Eve's hands raised. Can we unmute Justin?
Thank you for, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you diving into Jack. From experience, we also had a similar experience where the lab took longer. Even if we were to get everything done within 11 days and notified, that only leaves us 19 days to get the crop harvested. And as these crops grow at scale, it can take longer than the allotted 19 days. Maybe the solution for the county would be a 48-hour window to deliver the sample to the laboratory, and maybe if that 10-day period of the lab getting the sample results back to the grower, instead of crushing that time down to 19 days, at minimum, if they take the full 11 days out of the 30, maybe we could get an extension 30 days once receiving the sample. I would have to look at statute closer, and I would urge the board to look at statute closer to see if there is a limiting factor within statute that states how many days crop must be harvested from the time that it's passed the pre-harvest test. I don't know if there's a actual time frame that's a limiting factor within the statute, but I would urge to look at that if there is, and then maybe we can extend that for farmers, granted the difficulties of getting those test results back, and also the difficulties at times of the sample collection getting to the laboratory. And then I'm not sure if it's within the power of the board to be able to work on regulation stating what happens if the laboratory does not return those lab results within that time frame, because ultimately the farmer is going to be the one affected. So maybe if there's an extension, or maybe if it's a time frame after the clearance of the pre-harvest report comes back, so these farmers don't get stuck in this window crunch in case there's bad weather or whatnot, the different scenarios that we experience working to harvest these crops, especially as they scale, with our expectation of some of these cultivation, especially for fiber and grain, to grow up over 1,000 acres in cultivation. One farmer with rice, for instance, it could take some of these guys, a month and a half to harvest, a scaled version of an industrial crop. So just wanted to maybe point those out and see if statute will allow an extension to alleviate some pressure from the collection and delivery of those samples, and also giving a better grace period for farmers to be able to finish that in case the laboratory runs past their window there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah.
I think point out the obvious to everybody. If you are researching this, looking for compliance with the USDA final rule will be. I think that's part of how we're approaching this. Is essentially what could we do to make things better for farmers that will still be compliant with the federal rules that have been laid down. So. Is there any more comments on the 11-day sampling timeline, section 4940?
Well, the points you made about the overnight delivery, those are good points, and it sounds like you're doing a good job. You're bringing up some good points here. You're bringing up the points to make it simpler for the farmer. And I think that's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're really appreciating the feedback we're getting so far from everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if there's no objection, we'll look into the issues that were presented and try to come back with some perspective solutions at a later date. And
Jack, Kevin Johnson here. Do you know
Kevin.
the federal final rule on the sampling timeframes?
I don't have it handy right this second. I don't believe there is one, but I can't cite not prepared to cite the exact spot, but I don't believe there is one.
Yeah.
Was it not amended? Was back in March from the to 30 days, which is why we did the sort of emergency change of regulation in California to go from 15 to 30 days to be in alignment with the federal rule.
Yeah, there's just that 30-day harvest from time of sampling. Exactly. But the sampling correlated to the pre-harvest report. Yeah. That thing, I don't think there's anything about that.
Okay.
And thank goodness that they stretched that out to 30 days, because 30 days is not enough time, frankly.
Right.
But it's a lot better than half of that.
God forbid you wind up with a lab that takes a full 10 days to get your results, because if that's the case, good luck on your retest at that point if you're growing for cannabinoids.
Absolutely, yeah. Hemp farmers everywhere, contact that lab and have a good relationship with them, and let them know how you can't take 10 days to get your results back.
Oh, look at Wayne just made a comment, which is a very actually good comment, and because the labs work on business days, and then I think maybe the language is stating calendar days. But now, did we talk about that? Is there a conflict between our calendar days as we're relating them to a laboratory and getting results when a laboratory is only operating on business days? And are we considering that buffer that would be needed because they're not operating on Saturday and Sunday?
That's very interesting, Wayne. Thanks for bringing that up, Rob. That's definitely something I've noted that, and it's definitely something we can look into and report back. It seems like the 30-day harvest window that USDA locks us into, whether the 10 days is calendar days or business days, is not going to extend that 30-day timeline of the USDA, but that's just the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, if you want to report back, and after you do some research, that would be great. Then we could take up this issue again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, we're we're both really excited to try and improve the regulatory conditions for hemp farmers. There's a lot of things stacked against us right now. Okay, so if that was a lot of great feedback on Section 4940 sampling timeline. I really appreciate that all from everybody. If that's it, I'll continue to move on. We have several more items to cover. Next one I think will be relatively fast. It just has to do with some issues we wanted to bring up about Section 4940B, sampling request and pre-harvest report. And really is a commentary about the sampling request, sample analysis request form and pre-harvest report, is that they're very redundant. They're almost identical. And if there was some kind of consolidation of the two that was amenable to everyone, that would be good as a streamlining and reduction of paperwork. I think if memory serves me correctly, really the only difference is the pre-harvest report has the anticipated harvest start date as well. It seems like it wouldn't take a lot to merge those two forms into one. And so that was our comment on sampling requests and pre-harvest report. Pretty innocuous. If anybody has any feedback on that, I'd be happy to listen to it, or anything else about Section 4940B, if anything comes out, stands out to them that they'd like us to research or analyze.
Yeah, I think a little more research. And Vanessa, can you chime in on this one?
Yes.
Okay.
What part in particular were the redundants?
Yeah, about the two. Yeah.
It is very redundant. And I think what we need to, my feedback will be to standardize how we are. I know each county, according to what what I hear right now and what I have discussed with other growers in the past, each county does their testing in very different ways, and they read the rules a little bit differently. So standardizing everything will be very, very beneficial for all of us. And yeah, consolidating some of the forms, that will be also great, because we have the pre-harvest, we have the planting form, the pre-harvest, the harvest, and those three. And if you have the destruction, so.
Destruction also has two there's a destruction plan and a destruction report, which are two separates, which should also probably be combined.
That's exactly right. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And I do have a question, and maybe that's something I have to discuss it later with this team. We just put a question to them to discuss is, the regulation says that it's 0.3 THC. However, the reporting is with 3 digits. And I had to destroy some plants because they came back up 0.32. And I didn't.
Oh yeah, that sounds like almost like a poor interpretation by your county, right? Is that what you're thinking? Because 0.32% is equal to 0.3%.
Right, the significant figure, correct.
Yeah,
so that's something that
absolutely.
Nora said that we need to standardize for sure.
How did that not fall within the it's eluding me what it's called, but the gray area?
Margin of error, right?
Thank you.
Another issue, right? Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rob, for bringing that up. That also seems that it would fall within the margin of error.
Yep.
What county was that in?
Ventura County. So those are
Well,
my
it sounds. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Yeah, no, those are my 2 cents in regards of the consolidating some of the forms. Yes.
Well, thank you. Well, Rob and Jack, yeah, if we could consolidate some of those forms, that would definitely save time, be simpler for the farmer, and save money because from the ag commissioner's side.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, save money that's a great point. Saving money is helps to achieve one of the goals of fiscal solvency that is at the charter of this board. So that's something we should all be looking at. And it seems like the group generally has an aversion to raising registration fees. So the only other solution is to lower costs. And this consolidation seems like could be helpful in that effect.
Yeah, at the Fresno County office, they have a nickname for the hemp program documents as they relate to each grower, and they refer to it as a document sandwich because there is so much paperwork in the hemp program.
Well, you're going in the right direction.
It's not my favorite kind of sandwich, but
no.
Sometimes you got to eat it. Okay, well, I appreciate everyone's feedback on that. Am I missing any hands raised or any comment on this issue? Oh, Justin, I see Justin Neve's hand is raised. Would love to hear from him.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate it. Yeah, Justin Neve with the Hemp Farmers Guild. We were wondering, as we've seen in the past, like the state of Oregon decided that they were going to allow higher limits within the production. Also, the state of Oregon has the ability for hemp to transfer into their recreational and medical markets. But they still allowed harvesting and cultivation thresholds. I believe on flower, it was up to 1% THC, and on extract, it was up to 5%. The reason that they were stating that is they claimed that by definition within the 2018 Farm Bill, that hemp is technically deemed as anything that produces less than 1% of THC. For final form products, it seemed as though the 0.3 threshold was more so around testing and calibration, not necessarily deeming the threshold to be marijuana versus hemp. And so they believe that if you were working to farm a hemp cultivar that was approved and allowed to be planted, that they believe that those thresholds were within their guidelines and comfortable level of allowing those. So my question, I guess, to the board, and I'm not sure, the legalities around maybe not going 100% in line with the USDA approval process. It does sound like possibly a 1% threshold will be the new norm as the USDA continues to work through this issue. But I guess my question is that what is the limitation margin of error? Can we get that stated within the advice to the department, stating, margin of error is, the USDA had stated that, and I'm not sure if we could push to a 1% allowance within the crop, maybe pushing back a little bit on the USDA stance, like the state of Oregon had done, because I believe that if you test your crop and it is less than 1%, you have the ability to retest. And so, it seems like this margin of error, I had 2 crops or 3 crops that are varieties that failed at a 0.369 and a 0.37 this year. And so we're looking to see, really state that margin of error. So it's not a discrepancy within the understanding of the regulators. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Justin.
Thank you, Justin. Yeah.
It sounded like Justin was asking the board to seek clarification on what the maximum allowable COA result is given margin of error and significant figures that is deemed passable currently, among other things. It sounded like he was asking that. And is that something that you could readily clarify, Josh?
I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
I
that's
apologize.
based on the
So muted.
laboratories. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're correct. So measurement of uncertainty is addressed in both state and federal laws and regulations. There are provisions, I believe, in these regulations relating to measurement of uncertainty and incorporation into whether or not a hemp crop passes or fails. It is also, I believe, in federal regulations, but that is certainly something that you all can take a closer look at, and any assistance you need from staff in taking a closer look at, or if we need to connect up with our chemistry laboratory as well, we can do so. And any, again, suggestions or advice in trying to make sure that these things are clear and easy to administer consistently across the state, we appreciate. So, but I believe that those are currently addressed in both state and federal regulations. So I would recommend looking at both of those.
Okay, great. And that's a potential item that we may look at. Thank you for your input, Justin.
Yes, thank you.
If there is no more comments on this second item, the section 4940B, I'll go ahead and move on. We'll do more research on this and propose some changes and report back on the comments we've received. And then I'd like to move to section 4942. Approved testing method for testing industrial hemp for THC concentration.
Go ahead.
All right, fantastic. Let's see here. So reading section A, subsection 6, sample preparation. All of the dried plant material included in the composite sample shall be manicured through a wire screen no larger than 1.5 millimeter by 1.5 millimeter to remove all mature seeds and larger twigs and stems, and milled to a homogeneous powder-like consistency and combined before analysis. Now, as I'm sure all the farmers realize, and probably everybody in here realizes, if we're removing mature seeds and larger twigs and stems, we are increasing those components don't have any THC, so we're increasing the concentration of THC in the sample. So that is not something that farmers would like in general. I think everybody realizes this, but we are growing hemp. We are not growing hemp for THC. We need to be compliant, but we do not, at the same time, the laws don't need to reduce the range in which we can be compliant by items such as this, insisting that we remove seeds and twigs from our samples. If the product was marijuana, it would fail no matter if the seeds or twigs are in there. And with hemp, the 0.3% threshold is already so low that we don't need to make this more difficult on ourselves by prescribing methods that make passing the test harder than it should be. This language isn't in USDA. It's not necessary to be federally compliant. So it's going to produce a greater THC concentration when compared to what the USDA final rule requires, which doesn't have that language. So it seems like this is a big deal for farmers, and just pretty simply, we should be changing that language so that it aligns with the USDA final rule, because the federal government does not require that we be that strict in our sample preparation. And so the state of California should not require it either.
Wondering where that language came from and when and why.
Absolutely.
It's unnecessary. And it's unfair.
Absolutely, Rob. Yeah, we want to promote a successful hemp industry in California. We don't want to make it near impossible to comply. So I think this one's pretty obvious, but it is very important. So I'd like to hear anybody's feedback on the issue, and if there is anything from the board anybody would like to comment, and then we could solicit the public for comment on this issue.
Kevin Johnson here. Yes, the last 2 years, this was not required. This year it was required. You're essentially making a concentrate. In the federal final rule, all they require is it to be ground. And so 1.5 millimeters by 1.5 millimeter screen is very, very small. And, you know, we did when these rules came out at the end of last year, which we didn't have to test by, but we knew what they were coming, we did a sample test just to kind of see where we were at, because we keep data and records of how we test every year. And we had to figure that we had to test 2 weeks earlier this year than in previous years because of the concentrated testing methods. That was one of the things that we did, and we essentially tested like, you know, our test came back similar to the previous year, but we had to test 2 weeks earlier. And so it doesn't really, you know, farmers, you want to try to grow the best product you can, and then when you have to feel like you have to test 2 weeks earlier, you know, you're not producing the best that you can.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. I mean, it's like we're picking green tomatoes at that point, right? Does anybody else have any comment?
Well, we have to adhere to the federal, and if it's not in the federal plan, I don't know why it would be in our state plan.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Richard. This is California. It's that agricultural powerhouse. We don't need to tie one hand behind our back. We need to be compliant with the USDA, but
right.
This was in the federal their preliminary rules before they did the final rule. That's where this language came from. That was in that language in the
thank you, Ken.
Before the federal rule was you know, finalized. And so that's where that language came from. I guess the, you know, CDFA decided to go with the, you know, the unfinalized rule this year. And so that's why we all had to test like this, I think. Maybe, maybe Josh could address that.
That's an old holdover, isn't it? I think now the language is along the lines of grind the entire sample, including the leaves, the seeds, the twigs, and the stems. So they specifically call for it to be incorporated.
Yeah, then you got to blend.
Yeah, so just very quickly, I can't speak to the specific provision. I'm not familiar, but I will say the only change that we made for the final rule specifically was changing the harvest window from 15 to 30 days. So CDFA did not make any other changes at this point to incorporate the changes to the final rule. So if there are additional changes or additional things that the board is seeking, yeah, those are certainly good discussions.
Thank you, Josh. Yeah, that one's a big one, like we're saying. I'm glad everybody had some input. Is there any other input on this issue from the board? I don't see any. Is there any issue input from the?
Jack, will you be talking about the sampling method.
What specifically about the sampling method would you like to?
Well,
like to
in
talk
this
about?
year's sampling method was different than the last 2 years as well. And
That's absolutely right. Yeah, no, I do know that. I hadn't specifically cited that to be discussed, but if there, I do have was planning on seeking input from the board and public comments in general on Article 2. So if you would like to, which will be the next step, basically, if you would like to bring it up then, and request that we look into that or request, suggest changes that could be made, we'd be happy to do it then.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. Justin, I think, I don't see any hands raised actually at this point. If there's no comment from the public or board left, we'll look into this issue more. I think it's pretty open and shut that we would want this language to align with the USDA final rule. But we would, move forward by researching that and proposing some changes to this item. Okay, since that one's finished, do we have any other comments in general on issues in Article 2 from the board? It sounded like Kevin had one. Kevin, would you like to mention that on the sampling method?
Yeah, so the this year's sample was for the smaller, I think it's, I don't know, 3 acres or under 5 acres. It was taking the top lateral branch of the plant, 8 inches. And
it was complex, yeah.
And so by taking the top, the most ripe part of the plant is not a composite sample of that plant, because there's different, as the plant's ripening, there's different areas of the plant that have more THC concentration or CBD concentration. So when you just take the top most ripest part of the plant, I don't believe it's a true composite sample of your plant that you're taking. And so I don't think it represents the whole plant. And also, when you just take the top, you're subjecting your plants to mold intrusion by just taking that very top plant. In the past, it's been, you take a section at the bottom, a section in the middle, and a section at the top. I think probably, a section in the middle would be an adequate, representation of that plant. I do appreciate, I like the reduction of material that was proposed and implemented this year. I just don't like the taking the ripest part of the plant. And in the federal final rule on sampling, they don't really specify what to do. They leave it up to the states to adopt what they call a performance-based approach to sampling. And so I think that, that we have some room to, kind of make it so we're getting more of a whole plant sample from that plant, rather than a extra hot sample that, we have to test even earlier just to be able to pass our compliance tests.
Oh, that's a great point. Thank you, Kevin. We can definitely look into sampling protocol. As a point of clarification, Josh, where does that language exist, the sampling protocol language in regulation?
I would have to default to staff. Looks like they're trying to pull up information right now.
Sampling 4941, it looks like sampling procedures.
Yeah, it's probably the sampling procedures.
Yeah, Kevin, we discussed this, I believe, repeatedly previously, and my take from it was this sampling regulation was in line with USDA. I do know they talk about a performance-based approach, but I thought within that, the actual sampling methodology was laid out. in USDA to reflect the top 8 inches, which is why California adopted the top 8 inches. I wasn't under the impression that we crafted our own sampling method, because yes, I agree with you. Why take the ripest part of the plant? Why not a whole plant representative sample? But I just was under the impression that there was no ability to deviate, because if we did, then we were going against what the USDA plan was.
It was Kevin here again. It was probably in the interim rules, because in the federal final rules, it doesn't talk about parts of the plants or anything. It just leaves it up to each state to determine their sampling performance.
I'll try to be quick because this is but this is an interesting issue. So I'm just looking, and from what I found, USDA standard sampling protocols, I see this language. One, and it really is what both of you guys are saying. It looks like to me, the standard sampling method must be used by all producers, except for producers operating under a state or tribal plan that includes a performance-based sampling requirement, as Kevin had said. 2, the standard sampling protocol ensures that a confidence level of 95% that no more than 1% of the plants in each lot would exceed the acceptable hemp THC level, and ensures that a collected sample represents a homogeneous composition of the lot. 3, every lot and every producer must be sampled and tested. 4, all samples must be collected from the flowering tops of the plant by cutting the top 5 to 8 inches from the main stem. That includes the leaves and flowers, terminal bud that occurs at the end of a stem, or central cola, cut stem that could develop into a bud, or of the flowering top of the plant. 5, all producers licensed directly by USDA are subject to these requirements. And then, so it's not immediately clear to me what all that means, because in 1, it says the standard sampling method must be used by all producers except for producers. And so then I'd have to research that a little bit more, but that's what I found.
Are you reading that off of the federal final rule or the interim rule?
The final rule, I believe. Standard sampling protocols.
Interesting.
Let's see, it's coming from the Sampling Guidelines for Hemp, U.S. Domestic Hemp Production Program, issued January 15th, 2021. Okay, but regardless, Kevin brought up a great point about looking into sampling protocols, and so that's something that we'll definitely do. Is there any other comments from the board regarding Article 2? Or anything we've talked about so far? And are there any comments from the public about these issues? The feedback we've been getting has been great, by the way.
Okay, should we move on then to Article 3?
That sounds great, Richard. Thank you. Let's go to Article 3. Article 3 is concerns abatement and enforcement. And I have a general comment on Article 3 to start, which is that CDFA uses destruction language, where in the USDA they have disposal language, and in general it would benefit us to replace any destruction language with disposal language. And then furthermore, we'd like to investigate definitions of remediation that are in alignment with the USDA final rule, and investigate remediation procedures that are in alignment with the USDA final rule. So that's generally about abatement and enforcement. As someone brought up earlier, I think it was Justin, or he brought up Oregon's transfer of hemp to the THC market, I think, but they also allow for, I believe, or in Oregon, they allow for hot hemp THC to be transferred to the THC market. Maybe that's the same thing you were talking about, but these are remediation things where even if a farmer has a hot crop, the crop can both be neutralized and not be this renegade hot THC product, but also value can be delivered to the farmer where they can recoup some of their costs. This idea that in agriculture, right? If your tomatoes are rotting, you make tomato sauce. You don't throw anything away. If it's past the point of humans eating your vegetable crop, you feed it to animals. It's always worth something. And in the end, you compost it if there's nothing else. And farmers need to derive all the value they can from their outputs. And there's no difference here. So methods where we can promote that language, where we can promote that idea will benefit us. That's the general idea. So now in section 4950.1, voluntary destruction of industrial hemp crops, specifically, we identified the language in section A, except for established agricultural research institutions, any industrial hemp cultivator that wishes to voluntarily destroy a crop shall destroy the crop in a manner compliant with section 297B of Federal Agricultural Marketing Act of 1946, added by section 10113 of Federal Agricultural Improvement Act, implementing regulations and guidance, which is hereby incorporated by reference. The supplementary section of the USDA final rule, in contrast, states, excuse me, in contrast to that, the supplementary information section of USDA final rule states plants that are removed as a result of poor plant health, pests, disease, or weather events, along with removal of male or hermaphrodite plants as part of a cross-pollination prevention plan, are not subject to the disposal requirements herein. Yet our county, in our situation, our county required us to submit destruction plans for male plants that were culled from the field, added a lot of regulatory hassle, as well as for crop or flower residues that remained in the field following harvest. And so that was quite a burden. That's been quite a burden for us. Our field, it rained up here, right? We had the atmospheric river, and I think it happened everywhere. And we were able to complete our harvest. But with the county requiring us to submit destruction plans for crop and flower residues, they're pushing us to go out and chop our stems up that were left in the field, and thereby ruin the tilth of our soil just to comply. And this is a specific example of how we should here also be aligning with the USDA final rule. It's just not practical what we've been asked to do. If we had more specific language in the California codes related to voluntary disposal or destruction, that may make this simpler and may make the counties feel not like they have this burden of needing to intervene to try to make things compliant. Figuring out a way to modify that language to follow the more closely aligned with USDA final rule as well is going to be a benefit for farmers. Has anybody, just curious, has anybody else had any issues with that, with male culling or flower residue being made to be incorporated into a destruction plan?
not. I was laughing out loud at what you were saying because it seems so absurd and overreaching.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think, it's just the county needing more guidance, more specific language. They're trying to cover their end, and becoming overly cumbersome by doing it, and some clarity in the language will help, I think.
What
Now,
county
Jack-
are you in again, Jack?
That's Alameda County.
Jack, did the county ask you to dig up everything, even though you had a compliance test?
No, we settled on chopping the field. We settled on a field operation that we were going to do anyways. We strip our hemp.
Yeah.
And so the stems of the hemp are left in the field. And of course, in a mechanical harvest, you don't get 100% of everything, right? That's obvious. And so there is greater than 0% of the hemp left in the field, and it's fall, it starts to rot quickly. But the destruction plan that we agreed upon was not unreasonable, but the whole fact that we had to go through it was onerous. We're just we chop our stems up regardless, and so that was able to be our destruction plan, but shouldn't have had to go through that at all. And then the culling the males from the field, that was pretty cumbersome. We actually settled upon using a marijuana waste disposal firm, Gaiaca, I believe it's called. If you're familiar with marijuana cultivation at all, they have to deal with a highly regulated disposal of their crop material. And what turned out to be kind of the easiest thing for us to comply was quite expensive. We had to, our male plants, we submitted to one of those disposal firms, which they then mixed with sawdust, and they have a protocol. They mix it with sawdust and render it unusable on camera for video evidence, and just not things that are conducive to agriculture. Is there any other?
That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, it was, and it was the first year we had to do both of those things. The third year of cultivation here in Alameda County, but the first year that both of those issues popped up. If there's no other comments from the board, I appreciate everyone's input. I do see that Justin has his hand up and would like to comment. Justin.
Thank you for that, Jack. I guess maybe the best way to approach this, since the letter of the law is being followed so closely or interpreted maybe loosely by county, state by state, and then obviously the federal government weighing in through the USDA, maybe exploring the definition of harvest within our statute would make that clear. I've talked with Joshua Schneider, who was commenting earlier, and from my understanding, they were even forcing him to do pre-harvest reports just based around clonal propagation, claiming that the cutting of a section of the plant to make a new plant was considered harvesting. So the definition of what a harvest is could be the pathway to constitute the clarity for all parties involved as to what that really is. I'm imagining the language be something along the lines of a harvest is considered to be needing a pre-harvest report in the full process based on the maturity of the plant with the intention of actually fully extracting those plants out of the field, something along those lines. But I think the definition of
harvest is probably where maybe we could have some success in creating some clarity.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. We'll definitely take a look into that and see if there's any leads there. Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, that's a good point, because when you're taking another cutting, that's not a harvest. I mean, I used to teach horticulture, and horticulture has its own language. And that's just taking a clone, taking a cutting. Good point. Okay, do we have any other comments?
Yes, I just wanted to, so Vanessa did say in Ventura County for disposal or destruction, they say that they can place males in black bags.
Yeah, well, that's so if we were scouting the field, we would place males in black bags to reduce any pollen drift when pulling them. But the next thing that you should be able to do is basically throw them in the trash. You should have a lot of options available to you, but that wasn't this year. That wasn't available to us. We had to incorporate the destruction plan.
And I think to your, this is Vanessa, I think to your point, we need to, and to everyone's point, we need to work on the definitions and, standardization. I'm listening to what you have to go through to destroy some plants, and we just had to put it into black bags when I had to destroy my plants and let them decompose and then toss them into green waste bin. But we didn't have to hire anyone and have an additional cost because, this is, it's not acceptable. So I definitely, what you're doing right now and all of us working into the defining is the way to go.
Yeah, thank you, Vanessa. Lisa just had to take off. I see. I realized that this has gone on quite a while. This was, a big, a lot of stuff to digest, but I hope everybody understands how important, getting these rules and regulations working for us properly is. And I feel like this was very productive. If there's no more comments on this item, any other comments in general on Article 3 abatement enforcement, we'd be very pleased to hear about. And otherwise, that'll end our presentation if there's no other comments.
And Richard, I want to let you know that Dave Robinson as well had to log off.
Okay, thank you. Well,
and we do have one more public comment as well. Wayne did raise his hand. Wayne, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, great. You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, great. Hi, Wayne Richmond, President, California Hemp Association. Just wanted to shout out to you, Jack. Thank you for bringing out these points, taking on the task here. These definitions are really vital and important. As one who has been at the forefront with our organization and in collaboration with other groups nationally working with USDA to come up with plans for disposal being the catchphrase, not destruction. And I believe AB 45, which just passed, includes, in fact, a sentence where that is made clear, that destruction, comma, and or disposal are the key phrase. So glad to hear that. I think that opening up the thought process to disposal being a pathway, as Oregon has pointed forth, whoever that is, I wish they could place themselves on mute.
Is it the only area where you had the pizza going on?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes,
Richard,
hello.
Richard,
Yeah.
could you mute yourself?
Excuse me?
There was some feedback from your
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Thank you, Jack. I appreciate that. I wasn't sure that everybody was able to hear what I was saying. Anyway, disposal offers a great opportunity for definition as well, is that it's not defined under USDA rules, and something that we have been pushing for and are pushing for nationally is called the Crossroads Campaign, which is being headed up by folks out of Oregon and the Standing Committee of Hemp Organizations, of which we are a charter member. So with that in mind, the language on disposal per California state law is now destruction and or disposal. That opens up channels for making it, as Jack pointed out, not a burden on the farmer, and we support has it. I just got the unmute. Has no one been hearing me for the last minute or so?
Can you give us the last 10 seconds of what you just said, Wayne? We heard it up to like the last 10 seconds.
Oh, okay. Well, I was just reiterating that I support the, what we need to do is defining as particular language as has been discussed previously, and disposal is one of those that is very, very important. And on the national level, there's a push for that with the Crossroads campaign that is being supported by groups that we are aligned with, meaning the California Hemp Association, and actively involved with the USDA on the national level, as well as here on the state level. AB 45 specifically includes the disposal alternative to just destruction. So as president of the California Hemp Association, on behalf of our members, we support wholly looking into that and making sure that definition is wide, and considering the channel available through alternative sources of distribution, and that can be the cannabis market if they'll take it on. And we should look at how we can provide, for example, hemp farmers who are growing something that inadvertently grows hot, for whatever the reasons are, as long as they did not have ill intent to do so, and they haven't been a multiple violator of that allowance, that a special one-time permit at the end of harvest could be allowed to put that into the cannabis channels, and thereby averting financial disaster for the farmers. So we hope that you'll look at that as a possible channel for how we continue to support our farmers, both big and small, here in California, to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate that. I'll check out the Crossroads campaign. If I believe that's all the comments for this issue, I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to sit and listen to our concerns and the feedback we've gotten from the board. We'll research further these issues and the additional issues that you all brought up, and present at a later meeting some proposed changes of this language for further discussion. I'd like to include another on the agenda of the next meeting, another presentation by the task force, if that's okay. And that ends this presentation. Thank you, everyone. Richard, is that all right to include another report on the next board meeting?
Richard, are you able to unmute? Or are we able to unmute Richard?
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah, the last item, one of the last items we have for our next meeting, we have agenda items. We can put it under that. Can you hear me? Anybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep, sure can.
Yes, Richard, we can hear you. Yes, and so yeah,
Okay.
That's a good topic for that.
Yeah. Okay, Josh, you got the next thing.
Sure. So next up, we are supposed to have an election of officers again. The board is supposed to elect a chair and officers each year. It's been probably about a year, at least a year, since we've had a formal election of officers. I don't recall the exact date of the last meeting where we did elect a chair. But before we do that, since this would be an action item, I do want to check with staff. Do we still have a quorum on the line?
Oh, I don't, that's right. A couple of people,
We have
I know
a
Dave.
couple of people, I believe, that had to leave. What was that?
Yes, I believe we do not have a quorum. I believe we only have 6 board members.
Okay. All right. So election of a chair would require a quorum. And the board can discuss if there's somebody that's interested in taking on either the chair or vice chair mantle moving forward. And if there's anybody that did want to volunteer, however, we would be able to make a motion on it at this meeting. It would have to be done at the next meeting. So Richard, I don't know if you want to open it up for discussion amongst the members. It looks like Vanessa has her hand raised.
Yes, can you hear me well?
Yes.
Hello?
Yep.
Actually, I think that this is kind of good because I would like to meet people in person, and I would like to know more everyone, and in order to make a more informative decision and voting. So I don't know if maybe is it possible for this month of next month to have a meeting in person, if that is possible, and if maybe December no, but January yes, and have the voting then.
What do you think,
Vanessa?
Josh?
So Vanessa, so Vanessa is proposing pushing this agenda item to the next meeting, probably either December or January, and also is proposing, we can discuss that in a minute, is whether to meet in person. Jack, you're unmuted. Did you have any comments or thoughts on this?
I'd love to meet in person. That sounds great. I agree with Vanessa. And I mean, obviously we have to put this off. There's no question because of not having a quorum.
All right, sounds good. And Justin posted in the chat that he's agreeable and supports that as well. So if it's okay with the board and with the chair, we'll go ahead and suspend this agenda item and go ahead and hold it off until the next board meeting. And then if you want to move on to the last couple agenda items here, we can just have public comments and have the next meeting date and agenda items discussion.
Sounds good, Josh. So here we have public comments on matters not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments on matters not on the agenda?
Yes,
Okay.
Richard, Wayne does have his hand raised.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and unmute Wayne. Wayne, if you can unmute yourself. Wayne, you're unmuted. And I see that you also have unmuted yourself.
Yes, thank you. You can hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you, Wayne Richmond, California Hemp Association. I just want to say that in closing, that this has been a very uplifting and productive meeting, and I want to applaud Jack for his work, Rob for his work, Vanessa for her comments. It feels much more farmer-centric than it has ever felt before. And appreciate the thoughtfulness that has gone in on behalf of all of our members. You know, want to welcome in the new members. I know Dr. Emma Aronson, we've done some a joint project together in Riverside through one of our research firms a couple of years back, and appreciate the direction this is all going. So I just wanted to give you all a big welcome back. Kudos to everyone, and looking very much forward to the new direction. And I would like to point out that this is exactly why we need transparency before a state CDFA foisted plan is put upon us after it's been submitted to USDA. This is why it's important to have this board's particular input into these matters before these things are codified and farmers are then stuck with legislative remedies. So I applaud the work here. our members applaud the work here and keep it all up, and look forward to a meeting at least on a monthly basis. I would also ask that as we possibly transition back to meetings in Sacramento, or at least you all get together publicly, that the Zoom aspect of this has been very much appreciated by those of us who don't want to take, an entire day's travel time to fly up to Sacramento to sit in on a meeting and have an added expense of $500 to $800 to do so. So I would hope that we keep the Zoom component so that myself and others who are busy doing other things besides just traveling up and down and not being reimbursed by CDFA have an opportunity to have input. Thank you all, and look forward to the next meeting.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thanks,
Well,
Wayne.
that's what's on the agenda, the next meeting. Since we do have holidays coming up, we're proposing to have the next meeting on 18th. And if St. Josh, that would be great. And if we can't,
Richard, we're having difficulties.
can I have some
hearing
input from some other board members? Does that look good? January 13th?
So Richard,
Yes.
Richard, you cut out. So based off of previous board discussions, it was recommended to schedule quarterly meetings in advance. So the next quarterly meeting would be January 13th. But then it would be open to the board if you would like to schedule a meeting prior to that. And then of course also to discuss what agenda items you would like.
Right.
I defer to everybody else, the board's wishes, but if we can get to work on this language and the sooner we can get any kind of language dialed in and passed along to the secretary, the better the chance that we'll be in a good place for next season. So I'm happy to meet next month sometime.
What would the other members of the board like to do? We need some input here.
I actually would like to meet on a monthly basis. I know that quarterly sounds good, but with so many things that we need to attack, monthly will be right now ideal. If not weekly, really, but monthly I think will be ideal right now until we take care of all of these.
Okay. Does somebody have a suggestion? What day? December? Because I know people do travel during the holidays. So we're probably looking around a month away.
We always meet on
Would be
Thursday,
around-
right? Maybe the 16th. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, the 16th. That sounds good to me. Is that open for you, Josh?
It looks good on our end. I don't see any conflicting board meetings or anything like that we would have to be aware of. We can confirm with staff and make sure that we'll be able to have technical support that day. But it shouldn't be a problem if that's the day that the board would like to meet.
Okay. And then maybe the following month, Josh, we might be able to, we won't pick a date yet, but maybe next year we could actually meet in person. I heard that.
Yeah, that's something. So I will comment really quickly on in-person meetings. Is that right now at CDFA, we are not allowed to host any in-person meeting. We're not allowed to, actually I don't believe in generally that we're allowed to have any outside visitors at any of our facilities just because of COVID restrictions. But that's something that if you all want to explore, we will try our best to explore that.
Okay.
But it is quite difficult these days. So looking at January possibly is potentially a possibility. December seems highly unlikely at this point. As far as the December meeting, what would you want to discuss and what agenda items?
Well, we have the task force, and that would be first thing on the agenda that
I mean, that'll take up plenty of time. If that was the only item we saw today, it certainly took a couple hours, I think, of the whole meeting. So,
right, and then we'd have the election of board officers,
which I think that should be. I would really like to. I agreed with Vanessa. I mean, what she said just resonated. I'd like to meet everybody in person, and we got new people coming on that we haven't really even met yet, and then we have other members who are yet to be on the board. So if we can delay that, just we're in a transitional period. It doesn't seem like the right time to be electing to me. But
yeah, I have no problem with that. It's just that we have to comply annually. But yeah, we could put it off. But yeah, I think we'd all like to meet in person, but with the COVID thing, I understand that. Maybe we can meet in January.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, does anybody else have anything for the agenda?
Yes, can you hear me? I would say to meet in January, and we can see where everyone is situated. We don't need to meet in Sacramento. If we have more members in Northern California, Central California, Southern California, maybe to get a more centric place for everyone. If I believe that's possible, right, Josh? Hello?
Josh,
that again? I'm sorry, Vanessa.
I heard you.
Yeah.
She was wondering if it's possible for us to meet outside of Sacramento for an in-person meeting.
Yeah, no, meetings don't have to be in Sacramento. It's much more difficult for staff to accommodate meetings outside of Sacramento, and so we would need assistance probably from local county ag commissioners or others to set up meetings outside of Sacramento. We generally do meetings in Sacramento just because it is usually easier for most folks from different parts of the state to get to Sacramento just because of the ease of the airport and everything. And then also because of the ease of staff and our ability to run the meeting, incorporating things like Zoom, because we are able to do, we are able to accommodate the technological stuff at CDFA where we may not be able to do that at other locations. So there are some concerns there.
Wayne just read my mind. The World Ag Expo in February in Tulare, I think would be a great location to put a meeting together. I know I'm going to be there every single day. I imagine some of the other members will be as well. I'd love to see it happen there. It seems like a very appropriate place to have a meeting. And they certainly have the facilities.
The only thing about the ag thing is the hotel prices jump up about 5 times their normal price. I went to 13 consecutive farm meetings down there, and I had to stay quite a ways away just to get a hotel. So anyway,
is there a cap on the reimbursement?
Yes. So any reimbursements will be done in accordance with the standard state rates and state reimbursement rates. And there are standards that are set statewide, and we would need to coordinate with you on that. And they do vary from county to county.
I know when I stay in Sacramento, since it's a government meeting, you get a reduced rate of around $120, which is, the regular hotel is $350, but since you say you're at a government meeting, they drop the price. And I know they wouldn't do that in Tulare.
Yeah, so Richard, in the interest of time, I would like to suggest if you all can, if you want to meet in December, it sounds like there are enough members requesting that meeting that it would, we would need to hold that meeting. We would need to make sure that there is a quorum for that meeting. But at that meeting, if you do need to discuss additional future meetings or future agenda items, that would be a good time to do it. But if you're planning on meeting in December, so just to be clear, it sounds like the only agenda item for that meeting, which would be held virtually, would be a report from the Rules and Regulations Task Force. Is that correct?
That sounds
and
good.
budgeting and financial reporting. I think that if we're gonna be meeting, we should every time that we meet, we should go over our budgeting or our financial reports.
Okay, so Rob and Jack, I mean, that's you guys are the ones that are pulling the heavy lift on both of those.
Yeah.
Is that enough time for you to have something to present to the board? And again, a reminder, we do need to do public noticing and all those sorts of things as well as part of this process.
I'm not on the budget and registration fees task force. Rob's pulling that up by himself right now. But
no, I said that's fine. That's fine with me. I just want to make sure that the rules and regs too is to include the state plan. We need to really stay on top of that and getting that information as well, Jack. Ahead of time. Let's follow up on that after this, as far as our task force responsibilities are concerned.
Okay, sounds good.
But I'm okay for Thursday, the 16th of December. So I already put it on my calendar. If everyone else is.
Oh yeah, I'm fine with it. Okay, so then should we say adjourn? Time for adjournment at 1:18. And everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.
Fantastic. Thank you all. Appreciate your time, sticking in there. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.